Alright, so now we're going to talk about scripts and just scripts in general. So we've talked about briefing, we've talked about, how to instruct your script writer, but now I just want to talk about scripts itself. So essentially what it comes down to, and the basis of every video, is the structure of a script. So what I want to highlight here is that what people often do is just, okay, I have a script writer, let him write the script. No. Instead of that, what I want you to do is go over to your biggest competitor, look at their most watched video, and study how their scripts are structured. So essentially analyze, okay, what do they use as a hook? What questions do they ask at the start of the video? Or how does the video open? Is it a hook that's very fast-paced? Is it a hook that's slow? And basically, how do they hold people's attention after the hook? How is the script being written after the hook? Is there a lot of new questions being asked? Is there, for example, a lot of clips together with voiceover? So maybe they're showing a clip and then doing a little bit of voiceover and then showing a clip. So make sure to go to your biggest competitors and dissecting the structure of their script. It's really, really essential for the success of your own script and own YouTube channel. So if you're wondering like, okay, will I go really deep into scripts itself in this course? Probably later on. For now, I will stick to the basics when it comes to scripts. If you want to see really in-depth videos about, okay, how to do script writing, I can. But then again, I recommend, if you really want to go in-depth on script writing, there's a bunch of really good resources outside of this course as well. Obviously, I can make videos about structuring script writing, storytelling, hooks, whatever. But in this part of the course, I will primarily focus on the basis of script writing. Later on, we might be able to add some more videos about in-depth script writing, doing different styles, stuff like this. But for now, I really want to focus just on the basic principles and making sure you understand what goes into a good script. So that's kind of what we're discussing in this section. Same thing for all the other ones. Again, like there's a lot of very extensive tutorials about video editing. There's a lot of extensive tutorials about script writing. I just want to go over the basic principles so you understand them and you can get started with YouTube automation after you watch this course. But if you want to study more, there's a bunch of material linked within this course that you can study eventually. But we'll talk about this later. So after you've dissected the script of your biggest competitor, what you want to do is make sure you send it over to your script writer and make sure to go over everything just to check with him, like, okay, this is what we need, this is how it's structured. And every video or every script that your script writer sends back to you, try and compare it to that structure that you originally made. That way you know you're sticking to the format. If the format is not working, fine, you can change it. But in the start, try to stick to that script structure. This way you won't deviate too much from the original one. Again, you can make adjustments if something isn't working or you think something can be improved. You can make conscious adjustment, but what I'm trying to avoid with that script structure is essentially making sure that you don't drift off your original game plan. So that's why script structures are important. In the rest of this series, we're going to be talking about like different elements of a script. Think about the hook, rehooking, making sure someone's attention stays during a script. So make sure to stay tuned for that. But anyway, that's a script structure. I hope you learned a lot and thanks for watching. All right, so in this video, I want to go over how to make efficient hook. So the first thing, of course, is what even is a hook. So a hook is the first 10 to 20 seconds of your video. And basically the only purpose it serves is, one, reaffirming someone's click. So when they see your title and thumbnail, they have a certain expectation. So your hook basically needs to reaffirm, like, okay, what I said in the title and thumbnail, that's actually going to happen in this video. And then another thing the hook should do is make people even more attracted into the video. So think about, okay, they maybe because of the thumbnail and the title, they already had some questions and they were already intrigued, but the things you show in the hook should make sure the viewer gets even more intrigued into the concept of the video itself. So you can do this by asking questions. You can do this by showing spectacle at the start of a video. You could also do something like blur information and they really want to find out that information or a certain secret. stuff like this, you can all leverage to make someone hooked essentially to your video. And that's basically all a hook is. So there's a bunch of really great resources when it comes to hooks. We will all link those in Teach Yourself. That's another section of the course where we link a lot of resources where you can essentially study how to write better hooks, how to write better scripts, how to understand how to make better videos, since essentially there's already a lot of really, really good free material online. So this course is basically just aimed at like teaching you where to start. It's your stepping stone essentially into YouTube automation. So yeah, this is the basic of hooks. I'll go over the basis of the rest of the scripts, but then again, if you want to go more in depth on hooks, I would recommend going to the Teach Yourself section of this course, and there will be a bunch of materials linked there if you want to learn more about hooks. Anyway, so I hope this video was helpful, and thank you very much for watching. Alright, so for this video, I want to talk about rehooking a viewer during script. So when a scriptwriter is writing a script, it's really, really important that the scriptwriter doesn't only write a hook at the start of the video. No, this is one of the most common mistakes I see. They write an interesting hook at the start of the video, but then make a really long Wikipedia article. Essentially what scriptwriters often do is they make the hook sound interesting, there's good storytelling, there's some interesting facts, and then they return to their old ways of writing really boring Wikipedia articles or blog posts. No, I always tell them, listen, this isn't a Wikipedia article, this isn't a blog post, this is a YouTube video. So what you have to do in order to turn, like for example, a Wikipedia article into a YouTube video is add stakes and make sure you're rehooking the viewer constantly. You can do this by adding something I call rehooks. So what I mean is essentially if you're switching from subject to subject in the video, every time you switch between a subject, you essentially have to treat that new subject as if it's a mini video. So each new subject has a hook, it has stakes, it has a small story connected to it, and then you do this over and over again throughout the video. But of course it needs to be a little bit seamless, but that's essentially how you write a really good script. You start with a hook, then you add the stakes, then you have a bit of storytelling, then you go to the move to the next subject of the story or the next chapter of the story, then you add another hook, you add more stakes, you add a bit of storytelling, and you go to the next subject. That's what a good script should look like. And that's what I wanted to basically tell you. That's the basis of every single script. You have the hook and then you have the rehook. That's basically all a YouTube script is. It's a Wikipedia article structured in a different way. That's most documentary videos on YouTube. It's literally a Wikipedia article structured in a different way. So yeah, that's basically all you need to know for the basis of script writing. Of course, there's much more to it. But yeah, those are the most basic principles. Now, I hope you, of course, gotten value from this video, and thank you for watching. Alright, so for this video, I want to talk about rehooking a viewer during script. So when a scriptwriter is writing a script, it's really, really important that the scriptwriter doesn't only write a hook at the start of the video. No, this is one of the most common mistakes I see. They write an interesting hook at the start of the video, but then make a really long Wikipedia article. Essentially what scriptwriters often do is they make the hook sound interesting, there's good storytelling, there's some interesting facts, and then they return to their old ways of writing really boring Wikipedia articles or blog posts. No, I always tell them, listen, this isn't a Wikipedia article, this isn't a blog post, this is a YouTube video. So what you have to do in order to turn, like for example, a Wikipedia article into a YouTube video is add stakes and make sure you're rehooking the viewer constantly. You can do this by adding something I call rehooks. So what I mean is essentially if you're switching from subject to subject in the video, every time you switch between a subject, you essentially have to treat that new subject as if it's a mini video. So each new subject has a hook, it has stakes, it has a small story connected to it, and then you do this over and over again throughout the video. But of course it needs to be a little bit seamless, but That's essentially how you write a really good script. You start with a hook, then you add the stakes, then you have a bit of storytelling, then you go to the kind of move to the next subject of the story or the next chapter of the story. Then you add another hook, you add more stakes, you add a bit of storytelling, and you go to the next subject. That's what a good script should look like. And that's what I wanted to basically tell you. That's the basis of every single script. You have the hook, and then you have the rehook. That's basically all a YouTube script is. It's a Wikipedia article structured in a different way. That's most documentary videos on YouTube. It's literally a Wikipedia article structured in a different way. So yeah, that's basically all you need to know for the basis of script writing. Of course, there's much more to it. But yeah, those are the most basic principles. Now, I hope you, of course, gotten value from this video, and thank you for watching. So in this video, we'll be talking about basically letting the scriptwriter collaborate with the video editor. And what I mean by this is essentially utilizing clips and editing notes. So what I want scriptwriters to do, and this is a very important note, and we've talked about this before, is I want, instead of the video editor finding the resources, clips and footage, I want the scriptwriter to do so. Because if the video editor does it, he has to kind of like go on a wild goose chase trying to match clips to a script. Instead, what you want to do is let the scriptwriter first find the clips and then write the script around the clips or footage or resources he can find. That makes the script so much better. Another thing which is really important is that the scriptwriter and the video editor kind of collaborate. So if there are certain things that need to be inserted in the edit, for example, to make the script more powerful. For example, you can say something in the script like, for example, look at this tweet Logan Paul sent. Then the scriptwriter links that tweet within the script. It's easy for the editor then to just insert that tweet visually in the video. And then you don't have to read out loud what Logan Paul said in that tweet, for example, because you're just putting it on screen visually. And this teamwork makes the video so much better because essentially there's no unnecessary voiceover or scripting. So essentially letting a scriptwriter add clips and letting a scriptwriter add edit notes to a script is really important. That's something I wanted to note once again. Please try and get your scriptwriter to do sufficient research and really help your editor. So you basically have to see your team like, okay, the scriptwriter is basically the director of the whole video. The voiceover is literally just the actor, and the video editor just stitches everything together. So it shouldn't be the other way around. So make sure to note that. And if you add clips and video editing notes to your script, your video will turn out so much better. So please try to do that. Anyway, I hope you learned a lot from this video, and thank you for watching. Alright, so in this video, I'm going to be talking about the basis of a good voiceover. I'm going to talk about some of the elements that make a good voiceover. So let's start from the beginning, which is you have to get a voice artist, of course, that matches your target audience. So we've discussed this already, but again, this is really important. The next thing you have to get right on a good voiceover is making sure the pacing of the voiceover matches the pacing of the video. A lot of the times I see these really weird pacings. So either the voiceover artist is talking too quickly and is skipping over very essential parts that need to be accentuated. So like dragged out a little bit. For example, if you have like really intense parts within a YouTube video, you kind of want to like drag them out a little bit just to make them a little bit more tense. And sometimes they just go too slow. It becomes this really boring explainer videos and they're constantly talking at this same pace as if they're reading this really boring book. So make sure the pacing within a voiceover is right. So that's very essential. The last thing I want to talk about when it comes to voiceovers is making sure the tone of voice is correct. A lot of the times, the tone of voice in voiceovers when they're reading a script, they get monotone. And that's really boring to listen to. So you want to have a voiceover that basically goes up when they're speaking, but also when they want the viewers to pay attention, they kind of make sure they slow down a little bit and talk a little bit softer. because essentially viewers will pay more attention when you're talking slower and you're whispering. So they have to go from high energy to low energy. So making sure to coach them on something like that, if they're not doing it already, is very, very important. So that's why tone of voice is a very powerful tool to increase the retention on your video. Essentially, it's like directing music, and really great tool to just get a longer average view duration and make sure to note it when you're working with your voiceover artist. Anyway, I hope you got a lot of value out of this video, and thank you for watching. So in this video, we'll be talking about the most important rules when it comes to a good YouTube automation edit. So the first thing I want to talk about is when you're talking to your editor or you're doing the edit yourself, you want to make sure that 80% of your focus goes into the first minute of the video. If you look at the YouTube retention graph, you often see that there's a huge drop off at the start of the video. So in order to eliminate it and essentially get better results, what you should be doing is really put in the work in the first minute of the video, since this will yield the greatest return. So make sure when you're doing an edit that most of your time goes into that first minute, because that will greatly increase the chances that your video will go viral, since again, the drop-off is so large. If you can fix that drop-off at the start and essentially hook them for the rest of the video, because usually when people are on YouTube and on a mobile phone, for example, what they'll do is they'll look at a YouTube video in vertical mode. And then for the first 30 seconds or so, they will hold their phone in vertical mode. And essentially, if you can hook them in those first 30 seconds, they will essentially switch to landscape mode, which when they do that, they essentially commit to the video. So if you've gotten the viewer to switch to the landscape mode, essentially the chances are way, way bigger that they will watch the rest of the video. So making sure those first 30 seconds of the video is perfect is really, really essential. So that's why you should dedicate 80% of your focus to the first 30 seconds to a minute of your video. So make sure to keep that in mind while editing. The second tip I want to talk about is making sure you avoid stock footage as much as possible. You really want to make sure you're getting authentic footage. So I often tell editors, please don't use stock footage. Just try and step out of your comfort zone and essentially start utilizing footage from more authentic places. So think about getting clips from movies. Think about making mini animations with images. Think about trying to get authentic images off of Google, or using AI to essentially create images that match what's being talked about in the video itself. So by doing this, you just create a way more authentic experience when the viewers click on your video. If you use stock footage, everyone recognizes it, and it's just so generic that often people just click off as soon as they see it. It's just really, really low effort. So try to stay away from stock footage and try to become more creative in your edit by utilizing footage from other places. So keep that in mind. So the third point I want to talk about is making sure your pacing and your rhythm is good in the edit. So pacing and rhythm is one of the most important parts of editing a good YouTube video. It's essentially like music. You have to understand that the flow of the video is a huge element when it comes to trying to increase your retention. So make sure there's a lot of variation between pacing and rhythm in your YouTube video itself. Think about, for example, that at the start of a video, you usually want to have a fast pacing and hold that for maybe 20 to 30 seconds. And then later throughout the video, you will variate that pacing or rhythm to essentially create a variation. So by making high-paced edits at the start and then lowering that pacing later throughout that video, you create essentially a kind of roller coaster where people have to pay attention, because if you stay on one rhythm or one type of pacing throughout the whole video, it becomes really monotone. So try to really switch it up sometimes, depending on the story you're telling, depending on the part of the video where you're at. Try to differentiate between different types of pacing. It's really, really important, and it's essentially the art of editing. So keep that in mind. Try and study that as much as possible and incorporate that into your next video. The next thing I want to talk about is the importance of silence. Usually YouTube videos are 100% talking, like especially automation videos. It's like a voiceover going at it for 10 minutes straight. It's like literally someone reading an audiobook. Instead, what you want to do is invoke more emotion by creating suspense using silence. So say, for example, someone is talking like I am, and they're not stopping when talking. It's really, again, it's really hard for the viewers to know when to pay attention because everything is the same the whole time. So what you want to do is sometimes just add a bit of silence. So by adding silence like that, people focus on the video once again, and that increases retention because if there's changes, people take attention to it. So make sure you add a little bit of silence throughout the video because essentially it will really help people know when important parts are coming. So really valuable tip. Let's move on to the next one. So the next tip I want to talk about is the power of sound. So essentially a lot of the time, and this is probably the most common mistake I've seen, is that people underutilize music and sound effects within their YouTube automation videos. I know there's a lot of documentary channels that really utilize sound effect and sound design really, really well. But a lot of YouTube automation channels still only use some generic background music, generic voiceovers, and you want to stay away from that. You essentially want to try and invoke emotion by using different types of music. Try and switch up the background music in the edit itself. Try to add some sound effect, for example, to essentially accentuate some parts of the video. This really, really helps, again, with keeping that retention high because you can literally evoke so much different emotions with different types of music and sound effect that you can create videos that hold retention really well. So again, keep that in mind. The next thing that's really powerful for an editor is making sure he understands the story and he understands the script. If he doesn't know what the script is about, or he doesn't know what story you're trying to tell, it's way harder for him to make the correct edit to that script and to that voiceover. So make sure you get an editor to really sometimes read through the script and kind of talk with the scriptwriter himself and make sure they communicate and get to a mutual understanding of what the message is they're trying to convey or what the story is they're trying to tell. Because this really helps with getting an edit and a script that feels like they're unified. Otherwise, you get a really big disconnect between what is being said and what is visually being displayed. So really keep that in mind. Try and get the scriptwriter and video editor to collaborate and understand what story they're trying to tell. So the next part, which is also really important, and it kind of links into pacing and variation, is making sure you really, really add a lot of variation to your videos itself. So a lot of the times, again, YouTube automation videos can become very monotone very quickly. They usually sound like Wikipedia articles. So make sure you add a lot of variation on every single level of the edit. So try to mix up the type of editing you're doing. So sometimes you're using, sometimes you might be using animations. Sometimes you might be using clips. And interruptions, like for example, you could use interviews from certain famous people talking about a certain subject. You could use news clips to add context to a video. So make sure you switch it up, and it's not only the voiceover talking. It should be a variation of different type of clips and different types of visual storytelling. And this, again, will make your video 10 times better. So try to mix it up, try to add that variation. It will help a ton. So the last thing I want to talk about is making sure the editor or yourself constantly is improving their edit. So make sure to give constructive feedback for the editor and make sure he is constantly implementing that feedback and getting better at editing your videos, because this is a major asset for the long term. So it might sound like a very generic tip, but then again, I see a lot of channels not doing this, and usually their quality remains the same for months. So try to step up that edit every single video, because if you just improve by 1% every single day, you will see major returns in the long run. So make sure to invest a little bit of time there. Anyway, I hope this video was valuable. Thank you very much for watching. Alright, so in the last video, we were talking about making sure you get your footage for your YouTube automation videos from authentic places. So in this video, I kind of want to expand on that and give you some tips on where to get footage from. So basically you can tell your editor like, hey, there's multiple variations. Like usually when you talk to an editor and you ask, okay, why are you using stock footage? They usually tell you, okay, I just don't know where else to get footage from. Essentially to fix this, what I would do is just tell them, okay, you have the following options. And that's basically what I want to go over in this video. So just giving the editor some options on where to source some footage from. And it can maybe help you as well if you're editing the videos yourself. So the first place you can get a lot of really good footage from is just YouTube itself. Like YouTube is a huge content library. There's a lot of footage on YouTube itself. And people always ask like, isn't that copyrighted? It's fine as long as you use it in a fair use way. So if you use the clip for maybe 10 to 15 seconds, you're going to be fine. So feel free to, for example, download a bunch of videos related to your subject from YouTube, and you can just let the editor integrate that into the video itself. The next place where you can also get a bunch of footage from is just movies and TV shows. And a great example of a person that really utilizes this quite a lot is, for example, Jake Tran. He always uses a lot of movie clips, TV show clips to essentially tell his story. So that's also a really great place to essentially get footage from and replace stock footage, because essentially movie footage usually looks really good and it's also really engaging. So try using movie clips in your next documentary or next explainer video. Those really work great. And again, I also get asked the same questions when it comes to movie and TV show clips. Won't they get copyrighted? No, if you keep them under 10 to 15 seconds, you should be fine. Then again, I would check for copyright if you're using them. But if you don't get copyright claimed, usually you'll be fine. As long as there's a voiceover under the movie clips, as long as you're adding music, sound effects, and you're talking about another subject than the movie itself, you will be fine. So you can just use short movie clips, you can use a little bit of TV show clips, and you'll be totally fine. So make sure to integrate that into your next edit as well. The next thing I really love to integrate in every single documentary type video is using news items or podcasts. Those are really great, essentially also for adding variation. So for example, if you only let the voiceover talk, it usually becomes very still. I usually recommend also adding other people into the video. So essentially someone talking on a podcast or some news anchor talking about a specific subject. Like for example, if you make a video about how China is going to take over the US dollar, you can put some news clips about people on the news talking about this subject, and this really helps with engaging the viewer more, because there's multiple people talking and multiple lines of dialogue going on within the video itself. The next site I also want to mention, if you're looking for a little bit more miscellaneous clips, try using Reddit. Sometimes you can find really unique clips there as well. And for example, if you want to portray an example of something, like for example, if you're talking about a moment, you can usually find those clips within Reddit. So say for example, you're discussing a Twitch streamer that made a huge error. You could probably find that clip on Reddit as well, even if it got taken down on YouTube. So if you're searching for very specific clips, Reddit can also be a good place to find interesting content to use within your video. So the next way to source material for your video can also be just use images. Sometimes images can tell a really interesting story. I would really recommend when you're using images within your video to add some motion to them. So tell the editor, for example, to do a little zoom in post-production, or make sure that he's panning across a certain image. Those things really help, and especially with visualizing very specific subjects, like sometimes there's just no footage of a thing you're talking about. Using images can really help with that. Another thing you can also do, say for example it's a very specific scenario that you're trying to describe, is using AI tools like Midjourney to generate an image you can use within your video. Those things also work really well. So keep that in mind, and yeah, I would definitely communicate these things to your editor, because this really helps him make better videos. So the last thing I want to talk about is just instead of sourcing footage, is just taking a bunch of images and making your own custom animation. This usually is very intensive, but it does pay off really well because animations are usually very, very engaging. So if you have a more expensive editor or an editor that knows their stuff, animation could be a really good option for you, and I would definitely recommend looking into it because it really helps with retention. So yeah, these are a couple of options you can use instead of stock footage. I hope it helped a ton, and thank you for watching. In this video, I'll be talking about a really important part of the editing process, which a lot of people still mess up on, which is giving feedback to your editor. So we'll be going over a couple of tips you can implement when giving feedback to your editor that will really help them improve their edit for the next round. So the first tip I want to talk about, and I see this mistake with beginners all the time, is they'll say something like, I don't like the video. And then the editor is going to be left confused, like, okay, but what should I improve? So I essentially want to let you know to be really specific when it comes back to this feedback. I want to let you know that you have to be really specific when you're giving feedback. Make sure it's constructive and you're pointing out the things you don't like instead of just saying like, I don't like it. Like, can you revise it or can you make it better? That's something I see a lot of times happening as well, is where people just say, can you just please make the edit better? And that's useless for the editor because essentially he doesn't know what to improve. So make sure that when you give feedback, you're very specific about the things you want to improve about the video. So the next point I want to talk about is making sure that when you're giving feedback, that you only give criticism towards the work and not so much the person behind that work. So that's a really important part when giving feedback to editors. Make sure you don't make it personal and just talk about the work. Just only give feedback about the work and not so much the person itself. So that's really important when communicating with your editor. That will help him a ton. It will also make sure you have a better connection with your editor. So tip number 4 would be being constructive when giving feedback. So essentially, yeah, you have to be specific. But then once you've pointed out the mistake, you want to make sure you give constructive feedback. So essentially, you point out a mistake and you offer him a solution. So you say, for example, okay, the video feels a little bit slow. Can you maybe add a little bit more variation to the edit? So maybe use a little bit more footage, maybe change up the music here. I'll link you some songs you could possibly use. Those things really help editors. So try to be constructive when giving feedback. All right, so the next point I want to talk about, point number 5, would be being honest when giving feedback. I know there's also a lot of people who don't like giving feedback because they think it's a personal attack towards the editor. Again, when you're giving feedback, just be friendly and be really honest what you think about his work. If you don't think it's good enough, just tell him. And be really open in your line of communication. If you don't like something, you should 100% communicate it. Because if you don't, you will lose out on a lot of money. And also, of course, on a lot of potential success with your channel. So really try and be honest when it comes to feedback. And don't leave anything out. So the next point I want to talk about when it comes to giving feedback is being able to balance positive and negative feedback. Of course, usually when you give feedback, it's something negative. You're trying to improve something, you're pointing out mistakes, which is sometimes a little bit demoralizing for certain editors. So to keep up morale, I would really recommend giving positive feedback as well. So if you saw something you really liked about the edit, point that out. Say something like, hey, I really liked the way you did the transition here, or I really liked the way you used clips or animations here. That really helps the editor also understand what types of edit you do like. So make sure to also point out positive things within the edit itself. That really, really helps. The next point of feedback I would give is avoid micromanaging. So a lot of the times, there's also people that give points of feedback that are so small and insignificant, the editor gets frustrated with all the revisions. I would only think about, okay, does this significantly impact the video? Yes or no? If it doesn't, just leave it be. Sometimes a small spelling error, it doesn't matter. If the video still tells the same story as efficiently with that spelling error, just leave it be. Because if you make revisions on an edit, a video editor has to go in edit that mistake and re-render that whole video, upload that video again, and you have to recheck that whole video. So again, I really recommend not micromanaging too much. If it's a small error, like a spelling error, if there is a small mistake, maybe within a clip, just sometimes leave it be. It just helps with a more productive relationship. So keep that in mind. So the last thing I want to talk about is following up with your editor. So if you've given feedback, make sure you go back and check if they've implemented that feedback in the next video as well. So make sure they're constantly improving. So this is really, really important. Sometimes people just give feedback to an editor and they'll implement it into one video, and in the next video they'll go back to their old habits, which is sometimes really frustrating. But then again, try and go back, check if they've implemented your feedback in future videos, because this really helps keeping them consistent to the quality you're looking for. Anyway, I hope you found the video very valuable, and thank you for watching. Sometimes on YouTube, it seems like virality is just something that's random, but it's not. Usually there's a science behind virality, and that science points to storytelling. So understanding storytelling is really, really important because it's a basic part of human nature. So essentially, we've been telling stories from the dawn of time, and actually our brain is wired to respond to stories in a different way than we respond to normal conversations. Stories help us understand complex ideas and make it easy for us to share those complex ideas with others. And of course, this is something you can leverage within your own YouTube videos. So within the next few videos, I will tell you the basics of storytelling on YouTube, and I'll also talk about what makes a good story and how to incorporate those stories within your YouTube videos. So just to start off with the most basic part of storytelling is what even makes a good story. Well, a good story consists of 3 elements, which is a character, a conflict, and a resolution. If you structure your videos like that, it essentially already has the layout for a good story, and it will really, really help increase your retention as well as the shareability of your videos. So stay tuned for the next few videos. I will explain the basic concepts of storytelling, and thank you for watching. So before we talk about how to implement storytelling within your videos, I first want to let you know what even creates a good story. So a good story consists of a few elements. So the first element that's really important to a good story is character development. So implementing interesting characters that the viewer can relate to can be really powerful, and is something that's really essential for good storytelling. So the next element, which is really important, is making sure you add conflict to a video. Adding conflict to a YouTube video really helps with keeping that tension within your YouTube video, but also driving the story forwards. So make sure to consciously try and add conflict to your next YouTube videos. The next thing that makes a really good story is making sure you have a good plot structure. So your video needs to have a clear start, middle, and end. If it doesn't, it's really confusing for the viewers to follow along. I still see this happen quite a lot. So make sure you really try and incorporate a clear plot structure within your YouTube videos, because it will help viewers follow along what you're talking about. And this is a really common mistake a lot of YouTubers make. The next element I want to talk about is creating an immersive scenario. So make sure when you're telling a story that you take the viewers into the situation your characters are in, or into the situation you're telling a story about. So try to give some context where the story takes place. So for example, if you're telling something about the medieval times, try and describe the situation they're in, or try to describe the place the characters are. This really helps the viewer get immersed into the story and also create an emotional connection with the characters and with the ideas you're trying to convey. So try or a really clear concept of the world you're telling a story about. The next element that's really important is dialogue. So dialogue in YouTube videos is a little bit different from normal storytelling. So when I talk about dialogue, especially in faceless YouTube channels, I talk about trying to add multiple people into a video. So you have your narrator, and then you have your character. So say, for example, we're talking about Elon Musk. and really try to sometimes, for example, let Elon Musk speak, use a podcast clip, use an interview of him talking about something. This really helps open up certain lines of dialogue and also helps the viewer understand the perspective of the character you're talking about. So dialogue is a very powerful tool when it comes to storytelling, and it's an essential part to a good story. So the next part that's really essential is making sure the pacing of the story is really good. You don't want to drag out a story, but you also don't want to rush it. So nowadays on YouTube, of course, we have really high pacing to keep viewers engaged, but don't be afraid to experiment and try to maybe slow down your videos. And of course, if necessary, you can also speed them up. But again, try to focus on the pacing and make sure to leverage good pacing to ensure your video has good storytelling. The last one, which is really essential, especially, for example, for short form content, is surprises and plot twists. These are really powerful tools, essentially, to shock the viewers and make them remember that video. So if you're telling a story, try to incorporate those plot twists, try to incorporate situations the viewers couldn't expect. That really helps with viral videos. So if you look at short form content, for example, often enough, if you look at a TikTok, there's a funny plot twist where you think the video is going one way and then all of a sudden something else happens, and that is what makes it funny. So try to incorporate those plot twists. It's one of the most important factors to a good story. Anyway, I hope you found this video very valuable, and thank you very much for watching. Alright, so in this video, we're going to be talking about story arcs and storytelling structures. I'm going to walk you through a few storytelling arcs and structures so you kind of understand how most stories are structured and how to kind of implement them into your YouTube videos. So the most familiar storytelling structure is one that nearly every Netflix or Hollywood movie uses, which is the hero's journey. Essentially, the hero's journey follows a character that is flawed in some way through a bunch of trials and tribulations, and essentially throughout those challenges, he starts developing himself more, and at the end, he comes out a changed man. You can implement this on YouTube, for example. If you make a video about the story of Elon Musk, you can kind of tell how he started out and the things he faced and the way he resolved that issue. Essentially documenting the journey from zero to hero. That's one of the most basic structures. So this is a really easy structure to implement into your YouTube videos. The next structure I'll be talking about is the 3-act structure. This is often used in, for example, videos like Magnet Media, Moon. They often use this structure to create a problem. Think about a video like TikTok is destroying society. They first come with a problem, then they discuss the possible solutions and also just explore the topic in general. And then they come with a resolution. So essentially the solution to the potential problems or what key messages to take away from this whole scenario. So that's also a really easy structure to implement into your videos by creating a strong hook that basically plants that problem into people's mind and then essentially start exploring ways to solve the problem or even just explore the topic itself. At the end of the video, you will start discussing resolution. So how do you solve the problem or what are the possible ways to approach it? So the next structure I'm going to be talking about is the inverted pyramid. So the inverted pyramid is called this way because essentially you start out by something small. For example, you could do a statistic, something crazy, for example, about how 90% of the children under 10 is using TikTok, and essentially growing that statistic into a very large and broad story. So you take a fact or a statistic or a surprising element and you grow it out into this very broad video where you explore different types of things that are connected to this fact. So you can talk about different types of problems, you can talk about different types of solutions. This structure is really good for example, if you have a very interesting topic or video idea, but it's just very niche. For example, it's just the packaging of the video is just literally just a fact or a simple statement. You can use this storytelling structure to kind of branch out into multiple things. And essentially, say for example, you find a very interesting topic, but it's a very niche topic. This way you can still leverage that topic in the packaging and grow it out into something bigger. So the reverse pyramid is very useful in the case you just have a very niche fact you want to use for your packaging, and you want to make sure you have a video that's long enough to engage viewers for a longer time. So great format, great storytelling structure if you want to expand on a certain statistic or a certain element. So the next storytelling structure is one that nearly everyone has seen. It's called the montage structure. So essentially, it's very easy. It's simply a combination of clips that follow one certain narrative. You can think about celebrities that flipped out on TV, or you can also think about 10 times celebrities lost it. These types of things are just simply called a montage structure, and compilations are essentially also storytelling. So keep that in mind. You can use these structures in your YouTube videos. They're very powerful, so make sure to try and implement them while you're making your YouTube videos, and this will help a ton with getting a higher average view duration and also making sure you build a connection with your viewers through storytelling. I hope the information was very useful, and thank you for watching. So in this video, we'll be talking about characters and how to build a strong character within your video. So there are a few elements you have to consider in order to build a strong character. The first one will be having a character with a strong backstory. So essentially, you have to think of a backstory of, for example, Batman, who got left alone by his parents, and he was an orphan, and that's why he became a superhero. And not only that, he has the backstory, which essentially motivates his flaws, which is the next element, which is really, really important. His flaws are like his vulnerabilities and things you can kind of exploit during the story. So think about, for example, if you had a perfect character, a story would be very boring, because if you have a perfect character, there's nothing wrong that can happen because he's perfect. So you have to find flaws within characters, because if you have a flaw, that's very human. So essentially, people can relate to flaws within characters, and that builds a very strong emotional connection. If you introduce characters, make sure they have a strong backstory and also flaws because of that backstory. So essentially, flaws and backstories are connected with each other, because usually the flaws are because of an event that happened within the backstory. So next, you need to make sure a character has a goal to fulfill, a mission. If you don't give a character a mission, it's a boring character. So make sure that while you're telling a story and you're talking about a certain character, like for example, let's take Elon Musk again, you need to make sure everyone knows what his goal is. So now you have a backstory, which is kind of like the reason why he does things, and his flaws, his vulnerabilities, and the reason why things can go wrong, and his goal or his mission. So these three together, they drive the story forward. So essentially, if you have these three elements, you have created a character that has agency. Essentially, that's a character that actively participates within a story. So it's not a passive bystander, but the character actually influences the outcome of the storyline. So make sure to first incorporate these three elements, and once you've incorporated those elements, you can essentially get a story where you have a character that has agency within that story. Lastly, and this is very important because essentially it links back to the way YouTube's algorithm works, is you have to make sure the character shows growth throughout the story. So while you're telling a story, you need to show that a character is progressing towards his goal. Since we really like to see a character that is flawed and then overcome the odds and essentially get to the goal he was aiming for. And by doing this, you leave the viewers very satisfied, since they have this urge to want to see the character fulfill his goal, and eventually the character reaches his goal, and that makes people very happy. That gives them dopamine, essentially making the viewer satisfied. And viewer satisfaction is one of the biggest factors for YouTube's algorithm. So indirectly, by making sure your character has growth throughout your YouTube video, you also influence the performance of your YouTube video, since you're satisfying the viewers and they will essentially give YouTube signals that they are satisfied. This will highly increase your chances that your video will go viral. So keep this in mind. Storytelling and virality are connected with each other. The storytelling causes the virality. They cause the viewer to behave in a way that the YouTube algorithm picks up signals that the viewers are satisfied, and thus pushes the videos out to more viewers. So again, very important to understand. Storytelling is really, really important to understand if you want to be successful on YouTube. So make sure to keep studying it even after the videos you've just watched from this course. And I hope the information was very helpful, and thank you for watching. So the first question that needs to be answered when it comes to thumbnails is, what does a good thumbnail even look like? Well, a lot of people think that it looks like a thumbnail from Mr. Beast, Eric. Usually these huge YouTubers get taken out of context, and everyone looks at their thumbnails like they're 100% perfect for everyone. But this is usually not the case. Like, sure, their thumbnails look really nice, but does that mean it's a perfect thumbnail or it's a really good thumbnail? Well, for them, yes. But for 99% of all the other channels, this is not the case. That's not what a good thumbnail looks like. So you're probably wondering, okay, what does a good thumbnail look like then? Well, let me show you. So if you look at my computer, for example, what you can basically see is a channel started a month ago that's already performing way better than the average YouTuber. While if you look at the thumbnails, they're not even that good. They're literally all really simple thumbnails. There's a bunch of text. There's too much things going on within the thumbnails. It's hard to see what exactly they mean with the thumbnail. Most people would consider these really bad thumbnails. While if you look at the statistics on these thumbnails, they pull 1.3 million, 1.9 million, 2.1 million, 2.1 million, and even 2.5 million views. So it's kind of funny to see how the thumbnails we would consider to be bad are performing really, really well. So what does this mean? Well, essentially, it means the following. A lot of people try to overcomplicate what makes a good thumbnail. It's basically like saying, I'm going to get a gym subscription and then having fast food as breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I mean, like, sure, the gym description, it helps. Like, you will feel a little bit better, but it doesn't help the underlying problem. And it's the same thing with the thumbnails. Like, okay, sure, like the color theory, composition, they all really help with improving a thumbnail. But what a good thumbnail comes down to is you have to understand what triggers your target audience. It doesn't matter if the composition is perfect if it doesn't trigger the target audience. So that is what you have to watch out for in a good thumbnail, is you have to constantly think about what will make sure that my target audience will find this interesting. That's the only thing you have to consider. You don't have to consider if there are bright colors or that something is contrasting in the background. No, you only have to think about what has been working, what triggers my target audience, and how can I leverage that for my own channel. So how do we identify what triggers our target audience? Well, I personally do this by recognizing certain patterns. Let's have a look at my channel, Dose, for example. I have not uploaded on this channel for a while, but essentially it shows off what triggers my audience, a tennis audience, very, very well. So if you look at the most popular videos on this channel, you will see the videos that show people actually participating in tennis on a court do way better than, for example, tennis players being taken out of context. So you can see most of the lower viewed videos are not tennis players on a court. It's literally like them just standing around or doing something else. So the thing that really triggers this audience, as you can see right here, is when they see a tennis field and they see something happening on that tennis field. So that is what works for me. Even though like the thumbnail might not be 100% optimized, because this triggers the audience, it works way better than any other thumbnail that is perfectly optimized. And it's the same thing, for example, for my channel court cases. If you look at the most viewed video here, you can literally see how the videos with really rough reactions trigger the audience the most. So, for example, you can kind of see the pattern where it's like people who are very angry or emotional or screaming, they are the videos that essentially go to the top. So that's kind of what triggers this audience. They want to see people who are angry about injustice, or they are reacting to when they get a sentence while they're innocent. They want to see the reaction of someone who's angry because there's injustice done. And essentially that's the trigger for this audience. So this is what you have to keep in mind. Like, these thumbnails are not by any means perfectly designed, but the reason they work is because they trigger something within that target audience. And that's the most important part of a good thumbnail, triggering your target audience. So I hope you got a ton of value from this video, and thank you very much for watching. Alright, so in this video we're going to talk about doing thumbnail research, and it's very easy, it's very basic, but I just want to make sure it's highlighted. So say, for example, you found a niche, right? And you've kind of done some thumbnails similar to your competitors. That's what you usually do when you do a niche. I wouldn't recommend doing anything else, but it doesn't work. Eventually, when your channel is growing or a channel doesn't get off the ground, you essentially want to start experimenting with different types of thumbnails. So the first part, of course, of thumbnail research is just looking at, okay, what are my main competitors doing? How can I improve them by making the context or the scenario more interesting? But once that doesn't work, you want to be looking at, okay, how can I reformat this thumbnail? How can I basically look at other thumbnails that have done well in other niches and maybe transfer them over to my own niches? So a good example, I use it a lot, Sunny V2. You can take his format like this, and you can basically apply these thumbnails to any niche. So for example, you can take these thumbnails and apply it to this type of content, but you can also do it with tennis content or NBA or Formula 1. There's a bunch of variations you can possibly do, and essentially that's what thumbnail research is all about. You research thumbnail styles that do well or do well in other niches. Like, for example, this thumbnail has done well for this very small creator. And essentially you could probably take this thumbnail and put it in your own video So for example, you could do the 7 deadly sins as NBA players. This thumbnail could work there, but you can also take this thumbnail and put it on a different type of topic. So that's basically what thumbnail research is all about. Essentially looking at, okay, what worked in other niches, and is it possible for me to take this thumbnail format and transfer it over to my own niche? And that's basically all. I just wanted to highlight it. I think a lot of people still forget it, that you're able to innovate within your own niche. You don't always have to stick to the competitor style. I would recommend it at the start. Then when you start a new channel, try and stick to what the competitor was doing. And also keep thinking about, okay, what would work for my target audience? But yeah, if it doesn't work, don't be afraid to start innovating a little bit. And that's literally what thumbnail research is. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you very much for watching. Alright, so in this video, I'm going to be talking about the elements of a good thumbnail. So it basically is like a funnel. So you have to understand that when people are scrolling through YouTube, that there's a few steps they have to take before they actually click on your video. So we're going to go through these steps and see how we can leverage these steps to create better thumbnails. So there's a few elements. So the first one is you have to grab initial attention. So of course, when you go to the YouTube homepage, and I'll show you right here, you go to the YouTube homepage and there's a bunch of stuff going on. Like, there's a lot of thumbnails, a lot of people are trying to get your attention. Like, it's very difficult to stand out. So one of the most important part is first grabbing that initial attention. You want to drag someone's eye towards your thumbnail. So there's a few ways to do so. The first way to do so is, for example, by using bright colors. So bright colors, like for example, this is a perfect example of using very solid bright colors. You can see I use a lot of green, a lot of blue, because the tennis fields look like that. That really helps with grabbing that attention from the viewer. And using this, we can essentially win from the competition, because these bright colors grab attention way more than all the other thumbnails, and they're really simple. So essentially, by grabbing that attention, we can get way more clicks than all the other people on the YouTube homepage. Same thing for here, but then for a different reason. So you also you have bright colors, of course, within these thumbnails, but another very important factor is that there's humans. So we as humans, we recognize faces quite a lot. Like when we see a face, we have to recognize this. That's something that goes automatically, and it's a very, very human instinct, essentially, to see faces everywhere they go. That's, for example, the reason you can sometimes see faces within a tree or a cloud. You see a face, that's what we do. We do facial recognition. So using human faces within thumbnails really helps with basically grabbing that attention. So big faces help grab attention. So that's another way for you to leverage thumbnail elements to grab that initial attention. So the last thing that really draws us in is text. So look, for example, at the court cases thumbnails. We use a lot of text in these thumbnails, essentially, because people automatically start reading once they see the thumbnail. So they see the face, and then they automatically get grabbed in by the text, and the text essentially adds a layer of depth to the thumbnail. It adds context to the scenario. So the next thing, after you've gotten the viewer's attention, you have to make sure your thumbnail is easy to understand. And you also have to make sure it's easy for them to recognize what they're looking at. So essentially, those two things are the next step in your thumbnail funnel. So look, for example, again at those. Here, it's very easy to recognize. Like, okay, you've been grabbed by the colors. Now it's very easy for people to recognize, okay, I'm looking at a tennis field and I'm looking at people playing tennis. It's very easy for them to recognize. So immediately, they've been grabbed in, then they see a tennis field, which they recognize. They're like, oh, this is for me. And then, for example, if you look at the thumbnail again, what you can see is that essentially there's a context. There's an interesting scenario going on. That's essentially the second step to the thumbnail funnel. So you've gotten their attention. You've made them recognize what the thumbnail is about. It's easy to understand the context. And now we're heading to the last part, which is creating a curiosity gap. So a good curiosity gap is essentially something that makes people wonder, like, okay, what's going to happen next? Or what's the answer to this question? Or wow, is that really going to happen? It essentially makes people think about what is going to happen within the video, or what questions will be answered within the video. So if you look at the court cases thumbnail, you see it again. For example, in the court cases thumbnail, you see 5 reactions of innocent convicts set free. You see the scenario where it's like, okay, you took everything, and he's really, really angry. And when you look at that thumbnail, you're wondering, like, why is he so angry? Like, what happened? And how did the judges react when he said something like that? For example, another good example is if you look at this thumbnail right here, where he gets taped on the mouth. You're probably wondering, like, what did he say? Like, what did he do? Who is he? And what did he say to the judge? And that, like, curiosity gap and those questions that you put in the viewer's mind essentially is what makes them click. So the last element of a really good thumbnail is that it's a combo. It's not only about the thumbnail. It's always about the thumbnail and the title together. It should be a 1-2 combo. So, okay, you've got their attention. They know what it's about. It looks interesting. They're starting to wonder certain things when looking at the thumbnail. And then you hit them with the title. So they've seen the thumbnail, they're wondering these things, and then you add interesting context. That's basically what a title does. adds interesting context. So think about Daily Dose of Internet. It's a really, really good example when it comes to adding context to thumbnails. So let's just have a look at Daily Dose of Internet. So as you can see right here, you can look at this thumbnail. Looks very interesting. There's bright colors that essentially like grab your attention. Essentially, there's a curiosity gap that's created, and then you read the title and it says they made a meatball from woolly mammoth, and you're like, okay, that sells it. That's so interesting. Like you were already interested, and then they add that bit of context to the title, and it's like, okay, this video is for me. So you have to see it like this. The thumbnail is that what brings the viewer in, and the title is what sells the video to the viewer. So that's always how the combination should be. So you have to see the thumbnail as bring viewers in, and the title as your selling point. So this is essentially what makes a good thumbnail, and these are the elements that go into a good thumbnail. So make sure to incorporate them into your next videos, and thank you very much for watching. In this video, we'll be talking about how to optimize your thumbnails. Essentially, optimizing YouTube thumbnails only comes down to first, finding a thumbnail or an image with an interesting scenario, and then making sure the readability of that scenario is very easy to see for the viewer. So you're essentially increasing the readability of a thumbnail by optimizing a thumbnail. That's what it comes down to. So there's a few tricks to use to increase the readability of a thumbnail, and we're going to go over them. They're very basic tips, but again, I think it's really helpful for beginners. So if you don't know how to increase the readability of a thumbnail, this is a great video for you. So let's have a look at the laptop. The first thing we'll be going over is using the rule of thirds. So essentially, the rule of thirds is dividing up your picture in 4 lines. And essentially what this does, and this is a very simple composition that is often used in the art world as well, it helps guide the viewer to where they need to pay attention within the picture. So essentially, you're trying to put the most important stuff of the image within the intersections of all of the lines. So you have these 2 characters, which is near an intersection. So essentially there were 2 characters, so I kind of had to divide them across this intersection. Then the next most important character is, of course, the girl standing there, the tennis girl standing there. And then the third most important thing was the text, which is close to the to this intersection between the lines. And by doing this, you essentially help guide the viewer through your thumbnail. It's very easy for them to then go in and analyze from left to right, just like reading what is going on inside the thumbnail. If you don't follow certain compositions or something like the rule of third, it's more difficult for someone to analyze what exactly is going on in your picture. So this really, really helps. Another thing that really helps increasing the readability or the optimization of your thumbnail would be adding contrast to your image. So essentially, if you look at this thumbnail, for example, you can see that the background has a lot of black uniforms, so officers wearing black uniforms, and then the most important subject and the most important things are more contrasty in this image. And obviously you can try and change the colors, but you can also search for images that have a lot of contrast in them. So for example, when I'm usually searching for images to use as court cases thumbnails, I'll be searching for inmates, for example, who are wearing really bright colored clothes, and this really helps increase the contrast within a thumbnail. So then again, the orange on the black really stands out quite a lot. Same thing goes for that tape. You essentially focus on that tape because it's so contrasty compared to the background. So again, this really helps the viewer analyze the most important elements of a thumbnail. And you can also add contrast within the text you put into the thumbnail. So if you put text in your thumbnail, make sure it's a color that contrasts the background. This is really, really important. Contrast is one of the most important elements when it comes to an easy to read image. So keep that in mind. Try to create as big of a contrast in your thumbnail as possible. The next element we'll be going over is something called leading lines. Leading lines are essentially the way your eyes read an image. So let's, for example, have a look at this image. As you can see, I took this image from just a random YouTube channel. But the nice part about this image is that by the way they put up this shot, so the way they compose this shot, essentially it helps guide viewers to where the focus needs to be. So the audience standing along the sidelines help the eyes of the viewer essentially focus on the guy walking in the middle. And this is not the only example of leading lines. There's a bunch more. You could go from left to right. But essentially leading lines are movements or guides within an image that help the viewer understand how to analyze or where to focus within an image. So great way to optimize a thumbnail. Leading lines are very, very helpful for viewers to analyze what is going on. So make sure to integrate this one as well. The next one I want to talk about is something called negative space. So essentially negative space is when you try and make something larger than life, filling out a lot of the background with empty material to make the subject within that image really, really stand out or really, really interesting or seem really, really small. So, for example, look at this image. It's a video about the decline of friendship. And the reason this image works so well is because essentially it illustrates the concept of the video, for one, really, really well. And the negative space makes you focus on the loneliness, as well as it makes the character a lot more interesting compared to if there were multiple people standing within the image. Because he looks so lonely, he becomes interesting to look at. So using that empty or negative space within your image is really, really powerful, because you can essentially scale your subject down and make it more impactful when people look at him, because he's the only thing in the image itself. So negative space is a huge trend on YouTube right now. You'll see a bunch of very minimalistic images come by with a lot of white background. And essentially that's making use of negative space as well. Anyway, I really hope this video was valuable, and thank you very much for watching. Alright, so in this video, we're going to talk about how to create good titles. Like I've said before, titles need to be the secondary component of a thumbnail. So it's always about thumbnail first, then the title needs to add interesting context to the thumbnail. So when you're brainstorming titles, make sure you're looking at your thumbnail that you've made, and you're looking at, okay, how can I add a title that essentially adds value or adds context to the thumbnail? And that's really important. So it needs to be a title that complements the thumbnail and not a thumbnail that complements a title. So keep that in mind. That's what makes a good title. Another question I get asked quite a lot is, how long should a title be? Well, in my opinion, try to make it a maximum of 60 or 70 characters maximum. But really try to make it as short and concise as you possibly can. So don't think about keywords unless you're just starting out. Try to at least implement one major keyword. That's actually enough. Just implementing one keyword would be good. And also make sure that when you look at the title, it should be very easy to read. So it shouldn't have really long words. You should really try to simplify your titles as much as you possibly can. So that's basically how long a title should be. And the last thing I want to talk about as well is making sure you have enough title variation. So in order to make a good title, you can't just look at the thumbnail and just go, okay, this is what it's going to be, and only do one guess. No, you want to make sure you come up with at least 10 different title variations. And this is really important because usually the best title isn't the first one you come up with. So to make a good title, you essentially want to get your topic and think of 10 different variations to the title, or look at your thumbnail and come up with 10 different types of title and see which one together with the thumbnail is just the most effective. A good way to test this, for example, would be going into a thumbnail Discord server or my Discord server and essentially posting your thumbnail with your title and asking people, what do you guys think? Which one is better? You can post multiple variations, and this kind of helps you understand, okay, which title would be optimal. So I highly encourage you, when you just start, to post all your thumbnails, all your possible titles in a thumbnail review Discord server and kind of help each other with giving feedback on the thumbnails and the titles. This really helps improve your titles in the long run. So yeah, make sure to do multiple variations, and there's also a way to make those variations. You can of course do them yourself. Another way is just to ask ChatGPT, like, okay, I have this topic or this title, can you come up with 10 different types of title variations? That's also possible. But yeah, make sure to keep being creative with your title variations and make as much as you possibly can, and then kind of combine them with the thumbnail and check if they look good together. There's also a really nice tool. It's called thumbnailpreview.com. I will link them all at the end of the course. There will be a huge section with tools that you can usually utilize when you're working on your cash cow channel, and this tool will really help you to kind of see, okay, does this combination of thumbnail and title look good together? So title variations, very important. Actually, the only thing you really need to know about titles. Of course, you can go way deeper and think about different types of psychology with the titles. I won't go into that now. If that's something you guys want to see, I will update the course in the future, and I will start adding more in-depth tutorials as to thumbnails, titles. We can all do that in the future. So anyway, I hope you found this short video valuable, and thank you very much for watching. All right, so in this video, we'll be talking about publishing and optimizing your video once it's done. So essentially what we'll just do is run through what it looks like to upload a YouTube video for the beginners under us. Maybe some tips here and there on essentially how to optimize the video while uploading and how I place my mid-roll ads. So essentially, very simple. Everyone kind of knows how to upload a YouTube video. So once you've uploaded your video and you've put your title, you're probably thinking like, okay, so how important is your description? In general, once you've got an established channel, your description is not that important. At the start of your YouTube channel, YouTube might use your description if they really can't find your audience based on content of your video and the title, and also the thumbnail, by the way. So I often get asked, like, does it matter if I fill out this description or not? Well, the answer to this question is quite simple. If you have an established channel, it does not really matter. If you have a newer channel, it can sometimes be helpful in the case that YouTube just really cannot find an audience for your channel. And that way it will kind of also look at the keywords in your description. But nowadays, YouTube especially looks at your thumbnail, title, and the contents of your video. So those are the most important parts. Your description isn't really that relevant anymore. You can enter it if your channel is new. Other than that, I will just use your description essentially to kind of engage with viewers. You can maybe put some sponsorship links or call to actions. That's possible. But usually what I do is I simply repeat the title in the description, and if needed, I'll put some links and or a really small quick description of what the video is about. But other than that, I wouldn't focus too much on the description. It's not really that necessary. Same thing for the tags. Sure, you can add some tags here or there, but essentially they don't influence your video SEO too much, unless your whole strategy essentially is ranking in the search terms. It doesn't really matter. So for a small percentage of channels, sure, the tags can still be helpful in the case you really want to rank in the search terms. But if you're just doing a normal YouTube automation channel, tags don't really matter. So if you want to fill them out, that's fine. They're really simple, but essentially I usually don't fill them out too much. I just usually copy paste the same tags over and over again, or I'll just use vidIQ to kind of add relevant tags to the video itself. Other than that, when it comes to your mid-roll ads, I would essentially recommend to do the following, which is I usually place like 4 or 5 mid-roll ads. It doesn't necessarily mean YouTube will show every single one of them. YouTube really shows them if they really want to show them. So it doesn't really matter how much you place. I would recommend doing a minimum of 2 or 3 per 10 minutes. But what I would recommend, for example, is placing your mid-roll ads before a very interesting part. By doing this, essentially, you make sure that if viewers are kind of bored of the video and they're planning to click off, and all of a sudden an ad comes, they usually will click off. So if they're already bored and an ad comes, they usually click off. But what you can do instead is place the ad in front of a really interesting part or right on a cliffhanger. And then once that happens and the viewer kind of wants to see what happens after that cliffhanger, they will sit through the ad essentially, and thus you will earn more money. So yeah, that would be my recommendation when it comes to ad placement. Do a minimum of 3 per 10 minutes and you should be good. I recommend kind of evenly spacing out the ads as not to annoy the viewers too much. Other than that, what I also would recommend, if you have a sensitive channel, so for example, crime is a really good example, that's why I'm uploading it on court cases, and there is any of inappropriate language, stuff like this, to fill this in truthfully. So what to watch out for is essentially, you can tick one of these boxes. The more honest you are about your video, the more YouTube is going to trust your ratings. So I would really recommend being honest, but I wouldn't recommend pressing all of these buttons too much. Like for example, you can press the top one and your video will still be safe for ads, but if you press too many of them, they will limit your ads. So I would really recommend just pressing a few to basically help that trust score go up. Other than that, another really important part is making sure you implement your end screens to related videos. I usually recommend just putting 2 suggested videos. Essentially, putting end screens is really important because it helps with viewer binge watching. So the more viewer binge watches your channel, the higher satisfaction level YouTube gets from them, the more this video gets pushed. So keep that in mind. If this is the first video a viewer sees and they start watching more videos on your channel, YouTube will most likely start recommending this video more and more. So try to link other videos in this video to get that binge watching going. So that really helps. So I would usually just recommend a few specific videos, or I would let YouTube recommendations do its job and essentially do something like this. So anyway, that's for the end screens. I don't really touch the cards or products. I don't really do anything with that too much. And other than that, I would just put them on public. I don't really do any premieres or something like that. I've not noticed any significant difference in premiering your YouTube videos. So I would just either schedule them or publish. As to the upload rate or the upload frequency on your channel, I would suggest really looking at, okay, what type of content am I making? Are you making compilation videos, like low effort compilation videos? I would be going for trying to push a little bit more to the quantity side. So I would suggest doing like 1 video a day or maybe 4 or 5 a week. Other than that, if you do a more documentary style channel, I would recommend doing 2 or 3 a week. Those are usually sufficient. It really depends again on your format. So the less effort with your format, the more you upload, and the more effort you put, the less you upload. Also keep in mind that a factor that goes into your upload rate is also how consistent does your video go viral. Say for example, you run a really expensive channel like an animation channel or something like that. Sure, you can upload every single day, but if you're not sure if the video will go viral, you're running too much risk. So also take into account how big your budget is and what your risk tolerance level is, because it's better to then space the videos out and really improve them instead of publish them in 1 week, because that will kind of hurt your budget a bit too much, and that will basically sometimes bankrupt you. So make sure to also look at your budget and how consistent your videos are going viral to determine your upload frequency. As to posting times, I would really recommend trying to upload around 6 p.m. American Central Time. Really, other than that, I wouldn't worry too much about upload times. If it's a good video, it will go viral regardless. Unless you have a really big channel and you know your audience is situated somewhere, for example, in a very specific state or location, I would schedule it to around 6 p.m. for their time every single day. But yeah, other than that, upload time doesn't really matter. If you make a good video, it will go viral regardless. If you don't make a good video, it will flop regardless. So upload times are only really necessary to look at when you have an established channel. All right, so other than that, that's basically what you need to know about optimizing and uploading a YouTube video. I hope you enjoyed watching, and thank you very much. So in this video, we'll be talking about A/B testing and A/B testing with YouTube thumbnails. So essentially what A/B testing is switching out thumbnails if the old ones are underperforming. So the big question is, of course, when do you switch them out, and what signals to look at? So I would suggest, and I've made multiple big threads on this, don't look too much at CTR, really. What I recommend you look at, especially, is view velocity. So essentially, if a video dies out, and it does really have good retention, for example, like here the retention is okay, it's decent, I would try to switch out the thumbnail in this case, because essentially we've kind of flatlined here. It's not too bad, we're still going up, but I would recommend changing the thumbnail here because you don't have too much to lose. Again, of course, this video can spike later on, but I think my chances will probably increase by just switching out the thumbnail here, because if you look at the views, it's kind of flatlining. So if you would look at the CTR at this point, like you would say something like, oh, okay, it has 14% CTR. That's pretty good, right? So why should I switch out the thumbnail? Again, that's drawing the wrong conclusion from CTR. That's why I don't recommend looking at CTR when doing A/B thumbnail test. Because then again, I can't really draw conclusions from this, because like, okay, yeah, 14% CTR is pretty good to me. Like there are other videos where the CTR is even higher than that, but it has lower amounts of views. So make sure to always look at view velocity when it comes to switching out thumbnails, and try to give sometimes thumbnails a little bit of time. So especially if you have new channels, make sure that when you're A/B testing, so switching out thumbnails and titles, to if you think like intuition tells you and other people tell you like, yeah, that's a good thumbnail, on a newer channel, like it's your first or fourth video, just let it be for a month. In that case, if it after a month it doesn't do anything, but it does have a little bit of traction, try and swap out the thumbnail and see if that does anything. But in the beginning, especially if you don't have an established channel yet, don't start A/B testing too soon. I would just recommend uploading new videos, because sometimes, and you can see it in court cases as well, it just takes a long time for a video to essentially pop off. Like right here, you see it took a very long time for this video to essentially gain traction. So if you look here, it took quite some time before this video actually gained some traction. It took them around 7 days, but usually it takes a little bit longer. Like sometimes it can be up to 2-3 weeks. So again, in the first few weeks of your channel, don't switch out your thumbnails and titles too much. You have to give it time. But if you have an established channel and a video is underperforming and it's kind of flatlining like this, it doesn't really hurt to swap out thumbnails. So when you see a plateau coming in, you don't have to look at CTR too much. Like, okay, yeah, sure, this is a low CTR, but then again, like I can see the same thing in views. Just in this case, of course, you would switch out the thumbnail, and same thing with all the other things. Like when it flatlines and it doesn't gain any more real traction anymore, I would, in this case, also switch out the thumbnails. Like, and obviously you can switch out as many times as you like. For me, sometimes I would rather focus on just creating new content than constantly switching out the thumbnails all the time. But yeah, essentially, just try to watch for flat lines, and if there's a bump coming in your view graph, then I would leave the thumbnail as is. But if it's been flatlining for a very long time, I would highly recommend switching the thumbnails, especially on like medium new channels. So if your channel's like 1 to 2 months old and it has a little bit of an audience, then I would change the thumbnail if it's flatlining. So don't attach too much value to CTR. Sure, you can kind of gauge how a thumbnail is doing by CTR, but I would still mainly look at views to choose when to switch out your thumbnails. So yeah, that's essentially A/B testing. There are really nice tools that I'll link at the end of the course that you can use for A/B testing, but this is essentially the basics. So you look for videos that are flatlining, and then if they flatline for, say, for example, a week or two, you swap out the thumbnail and see if it has any effect as into the views. So that's the basics of A/B testing. Make sure to experiment and see what works best for you as well. And yeah, that's basically all for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next. All right, so in this video, we'll be talking about the YouTube algorithm and how exactly the YouTube algorithm works and what metrics it looks at. So first of all, I want you to visualize the YouTube algorithm as a big filter. Essentially, it's a filter that takes in billions of YouTube videos, then filters and sorts those YouTube videos, and then outputs them as recommendations on your YouTube homepage. So the only thing the YouTube algorithm is designed to do is to look at incoming videos, filter out 99% of the bad videos, and recommend the best ones to the right types of viewers. And it does this by looking at audience satisfaction. So audience satisfaction is essentially how fulfilled are viewers after they watch a video. And will they come back to YouTube to watch more videos because of your video? That is essentially what audience satisfaction is. So in order to judge audience satisfaction, YouTube, for example, uses signals like CTR, watch time, session duration on your channel, for example, comments, likes, subscriptions, how recently a person watched a video on the same topic you make a video about, what the user has searched for in the past, and the user's audience demographic and location. These are just a few examples. There are way more metrics that YouTube takes into consideration when looking at audience satisfaction, but these are just a few examples. Later on, we'll be going over these signals more in detail. So for now, I want to kind of break down how exactly court cases broke into the algorithm, and hopefully by explaining how we did that there, you kind of start to understand how the YouTube algorithm operates. So the first part about the success of court cases is I first found an area of interest, which is court case videos, which are blowing up. So I knew based on the YouTube algorithm that there were a lot of users watching court case videos in the past few weeks. And I also knew if that's the case, and I also create videos on that subject, YouTube algorithm will most likely also recommend my videos, because essentially if viewers are satisfied with watching those court cases videos and YouTube knows viewers essentially give off high satisfaction signals on court case videos, and I upload more court case videos, YouTube will happily serve those videos to that pool of viewers. And that's essentially what I was tapping into with court cases. And that's what you're tapping into with any other niche on YouTube. So you're trying to find that pool of viewers that is very satisfied on one certain subject or topic, and essentially then creating those same videos and serving it to those same viewers. And by doing this, it's very easy for you to tap into the algorithm, because YouTube heavily looks at someone's watch history, someone's search history, and what other videos they watched in the last few weeks. So after I found the court cases niche, I closely studied what made those videos work. So I looked at the topics, I looked at, okay, what parts of the videos made the audience satisfied, and then I essentially took that and emulated that on my own channel. So I closely mimicked the topics. The reason why I first started mimicking the topics is essentially if you try and stay as close to the same relevant topic YouTube knows there's high audience satisfaction over, it's very easy for YouTube to redirect that high satisfied audience to your channel. So essentially that's why you don't want to deviate too much from the original format, is because by sticking closely to the original format, it's easier for YouTube to make that bridge between the already established satisfied channel and your channel that is essentially doing the same thing and is probably also going to satisfy that same audience. So they're trying to tap into that same topic by essentially emulating that on your channel, and later on you can essentially start variating your topics and formats. But for now, try to emulate what is working, because it's essentially easier for YouTube to connect that audience between two different videos. Another thing that's also really important when analyzing, for example, court cases, is that it has to be something that's recent. Like the videos that blew up, the reason court cases worked is because I was fast to jump onto it. So say, for example, I waited another year, then people will start to stop watching court case videos. And essentially, because of that, the strength of that topic takes a decline in the YouTube algorithm. The more recent someone watches a video and gives off high satisfaction signals, the easier it is to tap into. Because say, for example, that satisfaction took place a year ago, then it's not interesting for the YouTube algorithm anymore. It wants to know what the viewer finds interesting right now and not what it found interesting a year ago. And that's why we're always trying to tap into the most recent niches, because those recent niches we know is still stuck in that YouTube algorithm, and we know we can leverage that recent niche and essentially make sure the algorithm starts pushing those viewers to our channel as well. So that's one part of the success. We really leverage recency in the algorithm and also what users have been watching. So those two parts within the YouTube algorithm, we really leverage quite a lot. Then lastly, of course, when I started court cases, I analyzed, okay, what triggered the audience on the original channel? What made sure that they started giving off satisfaction signals? So again, satisfaction signals are comments. So I started analyzing the comments and what parts of the videos made them comment. And essentially by implementing as much of those moments in my own videos, I increased my comment engagement. I was looking at, okay, what part of the video, for example, has a lot of relative interest. So if you study that YouTube video, for example, you have your relative retention graph and you can essentially see, okay, what peaked the interest within a video. So I usually notice that the things that really piqued viewers' interest were, for example, heavy reactions or something that goes wrong within the court. Those things really piqued their interest, and I thus concluded that the more of those clips I inserted in my video, the better the video performed. And of course, that sounds very intuitive, and audience satisfaction is something that's very intuitive to look at. But then again, you can also study it by looking at, okay, where can I see the audience attention spike? So for example, you can see the spikes here. Essentially, that's what you can study to understand, okay, what is the audience looking for and what part did they find the most interesting? And then, like I said, the comments are also a really great indicator, and that's something I also studied to see, okay, what made them outraged? What made them exactly write the comment? And by studying this, you really start to understand the audience satisfaction signals that made that viral channel work. So make sure to keep that in mind. Think about the audience satisfaction signals, think about the comments, think about the things that pique their interest, because essentially that's how the YouTube algorithm works. You have to start looking at audience satisfaction signals. So when it comes to audience satisfaction signals, there are two types of signals. You have explicit signals and you also have implicit signals. So explicit signals are essentially signals that a viewer gives off to YouTube directly. So think about when you leave a like or you give a subscription on the channel, that's something YouTube can measure directly from you because you're giving off that signal directly to them. Same thing for if you leave a comment, if you fill out a survey, those things all give off explicit audience satisfaction signals. So explicit signals are essentially less important than implicit signals. And the reason for this is very simple. Essentially, you have two types of viewers on YouTube. The first type is someone who always interacts with the video. So they're always commenting, liking, subscribing. That's the first type. The second type, which is 80% of the viewers, are ghost viewers, very passive viewers. And these viewers essentially only watch the video and they don't really interact with the video itself. So essentially, this means if you only focus on explicit signals, you essentially fail because only 20% give off explicit signals. So those 20% don't tell the whole picture. So YouTube had to come up with another way, essentially, to also look at, okay, what do the viewers that don't like, subscribe, and share a lot, how do we understand what they like? Well, that's where implicit signals come into play. But before we go into implicit signals, I also want to highlight again that if you look at those different types of viewer, you have to understand that viewer 1 and viewer 2 are not equal to each other. So not all viewers on YouTube are equal. Viewer 1 is a less valuable viewer than viewer 2, because viewer 1, his like and engagement is not as scarce as viewer 2, because viewer 2 only comments and likes when he finds something really interesting or valuable. So keep that in mind. If someone is viewer 1, their engagement is not as important as someone who's viewer 2. So if you can create a way to essentially make viewer 2 comment on your video, that gives off huge bonus points in that explicit signal system. So keep that in mind. Viewer 1, not as valuable. If you can make viewer 2 comment and like engage with your video, that's very valuable, because YouTube then thinks, hey, this is a very good channel. So again, very, very important. Now, onto the implicit signals, like we talked about before. Implicit signals are essentially what YouTube uses to measure all the passive viewers. So all the indirect signals viewers are giving. So even if you don't engage with a video at all, you still give off behavioral signals. And that's what implicit signals are. Implicit signals are indirect signals viewers give off when they're watching YouTube videos. So a few examples of implicit signals are CTR, average view percentage, what a viewer does after they click off from your video. Do they go to another video on the same subject? Do they close out of the YouTube app? That's something YouTube looks at. It's also called returning viewers. That's very, very important. Session time. How long does a viewer spend on your video or channel in total? So essentially, session time is the total time a viewer spends on your channel, and a lot of other smaller signals. But then again, these are the most important ones. So keep that in mind. But essentially, implicit signals weigh more than explicit signals, because only 20% of viewers give off explicit signals and all viewers give off implicit signals. So that's why YouTube lays more value on the implicit signals. So now we've talked about explicit and implicit signals on YouTube. I now want to go over what exactly the process is when it comes to a video going viral. So in order to explain this process, I kind of want to turn the YouTube algorithm into a video game and kind of walk you through the process by using that kind of terminology. So I hope this will kind of simplify the process and the concept to you as well. So once you upload a video, each video has to pass through different levels, and in each level they essentially have to find an audience and satisfy that audience to a certain level. So let's say, for example, each level they have to get an audience satisfaction score of 60. So if they don't get that audience satisfaction score of 60 within that viewer group, so each level they go up, the more viewers they get, they have to satisfy, so it becomes harder every single time. So but they have to get that audience satisfaction score of 60. So essentially, if they don't get that audience satisfaction score, that minimum audience satisfaction score, that video will die out and it will have to go back to the lobby and try again. So that's essentially the premise of the game. So think about that. So each video is a player within the YouTube algorithm. If they don't complete a certain audience satisfaction score by a certain time, the video dies out and has to go back and try again. So now you understand the basic premise of the game, we can go over a few simple concepts to essentially help you understand the YouTube algorithm. So say, for example, that in different niches, you will have different types of scores you need to complete to go to the next level. So let's compare the two. So for example, let's again take court cases and the motivational niche. Court cases at the time I started was not saturated at all, meaning the audience satisfaction score I had to get was lower than, for example, a video that has to play within the motivational niche. Because in the court cases niche, there was just way less competition. which means that I have to get a lower satisfaction score to pass on to the next level. In the motivational niche, there is thousands and thousands of players competing against you, which essentially makes it that you have to get a really high score to pass on to the next level each time. Of course, you can go viral within a motivational niche, and that's the thing people fall into. Yeah, you can go viral and everyone can go viral, but the problem is it's just very difficult because you have to get a very high satisfaction score. So keep this in mind, that it's way easier to go viral in a niche like court case because you can easily pass on to the next level because there's not a lot of competition yet and the quality is not as high. And in a niche like motivation, like a motivational niche, you'll have to get like a score of 80 or 90 to pass on to the next level. So again, if you think of niche saturation, think about it like this within the YouTube algorithm. If you have more competition, YouTube simply needs a higher satisfaction score to let you onto the next level. So another thing you have to consider is that YouTube doesn't only look at, okay, is a video within the same niche or the same topic, but also is the video the same length. So essentially, if YouTube didn't compare video length to each other, so say for example, it only looked at the most amount of watch time, you will only see videos that would be 2 or 3 hours long. So YouTube can't only look at watch time. They have to look at average view duration across videos that have similar lengths. So essentially, you can also not only compete within different niches, but you can also compete in different lengths of YouTube videos. So if you make very short YouTube videos, it becomes harder because shorter YouTube videos are easier to make. So the satisfaction score you have to get on a short YouTube video will be higher than a satisfaction score you have to get on a video that's maybe 30 minutes to an hour long, because there's just less competition in that bracket essentially. So you can leverage this information. Say for example, you enter a new niche and you see a lot of competition of videos that are maybe 1 to 2 minutes long. Maybe you can compete by making videos that are an hour long or 30 minutes long. So then again, it's not only topics that you compete in, but also the length of a video that YouTube looks at to essentially compare different videos to each other. So it's essentially one big free-for-all, the YouTube algorithm. The last really important rule you have to understand when it comes to the YouTube algorithm game is essentially understanding how getting higher through the view levels makes it harder for you to reach your audience satisfaction score. So when you first publish a video, your video will first get served to your hardcore fans. Those hardcore fans will give off way stronger satisfaction signals than a casual viewer later down the road. So for example, if you're in level 1, it will push to your first 100 hardcore fans. Those 100 hardcore fans will always react really, really well. So you'll pass on to the next level. And then the higher the level you get, the broader the audience becomes and the less engaged they become with your videos. So as you progress through the levels, reaching that audience satisfaction score, for example, of 60, will become harder and harder because the audience becomes less and less engaged with the topic as well as your channel. So that's why videos die out over time, because as it progresses through the YouTube algorithm or through the YouTube algorithm levels, the audience becomes less and less satisfied until you hit that threshold where YouTube says, okay, we're killing off the video, it's not getting enough engagement, and you have to go back to level 1, and it will start serving your video again to a really small, more dedicated audience. And if it works again, it will start scaling up your video to more and more viewers, and that's how sometimes videos randomly take off after a few years, because it has been going through all these levels over and over and over again, and sometimes it just luckily escapes to a higher level once again, and then you see your view velocity shoot up once again. So I hope this model of thinking helps you reason why certain videos perform the way they do on your YouTube channel. So if a video doesn't take off, it's usually because, again, there's too much competition in your room, your video doesn't meet the right satisfaction score and doesn't get pushed further. So these are all things you can use the reason why videos perform the way they do. So I hope you learn a lot from this video, and thank you very much for watching. Alright, the title of this video was actually a little bit misleading. In this video, I won't be explaining to you how to analyze CTR. I won't be explaining how to improve it. I'll simply be explaining to you how to understand CTR. So let's first kick off the video with the following statement. CTR is not a good way of determining if the packaging of a video is good or bad. It's a very confusing way of doing so. It's not the most efficient way of determining is the packaging, so the thumbnail title of a video, good or bad. There are better ways to do so. We will get to that later, but first I will explain why CTR is a very misleading metric. So say, for example, you have a company where you have 10 employees. 8 of those employees earn $30,000 a month. You have another employee who earns $90,000, and then you have another employee who earns $500,000 a month. So the question that the company gets asked is, what's your average salary? Now, because there's people with, for example, a salary of $500,000 a month, the average salary will be $93,000 a month. So is that salary really representative of what the actual average salary is, or the median salary actually is? No, it's not. And that's exactly what CTR does as well. It hides the true context or the true outliers with a bunch of noise. Because it's an average of an average, CTR hides actual signals, and it's really difficult or confusing to draw conclusions from CTR because you don't have the full picture. Essentially, you're blindsided by YouTube. The CTR might be useful for YouTube itself because they have the full picture. They understand that there's 8 employees with 30,000 and 2 with just really high salaries. They have that full picture, but we do not. We only have that average metric, CTR. And if we start basing our decisions on that average salary or that average CTR, we will make the wrong decisions. So that's why I highly encourage not so much looking at CTR, but looking at views instead. Alright, so just to demonstrate what exactly you should be doing instead of looking at CTR, I'll use court cases as an example. So say we would be looking at this video here. You would see, okay, it has an 8%, 9% click-through rate. That's pretty good. Like for most people, 9 or 10% click-through rates, those are pretty decent. But the issue here is that this video is heavily underperforming. Like most videos on this channel have at least 100,000 views or way, way more. So it's heavily underperforming while the CTR is pretty decent. So instead, what you can way better look at is just the views. It's such a clear metric. Like, okay, the views are flatlining. I can't change anything about how the average view percentage performs because I can't edit the video after the fact or make major changes to the video. I can't change the video topic or video idea itself. So the only thing I can start tweaking is the packaging. So in that way, views are such a transparent way of judging did a thumbnail or title change work, because that's the only variable you're changing. You're only changing the thumbnail and title, and thus CTR is kind of useless, because if you change the thumbnail and title and the views go up, you know what the cause was, because it was simply you changing the thumbnail and title and essentially the views responding to it. So you should be looking at views when judging what to do with your thumbnail and title, or if it was a good thumbnail and title. When a video underperforms, you just have to start tweaking all the different variables. Okay, the video underperformed. First, I start tweaking the packaging on that video. Okay, did that not work? Then I know it wasn't the packaging on the video that failed. It was probably the video or the topic idea on that video. So it's very easy to analyze by just looking at views. You don't need to look at CTR. You only have to look at, okay, can I tweak the packaging and does that improve anything? Okay, it doesn't improve anything, then it's probably something to do with the video idea or the video itself. So, and then I have to, of course, start studying the video and understand, okay, what can I improve to make this go viral? So it's as simple as that. Now you understand CTR. Now you also understand how to actually analyze and improve your packaging. And this is such a clear way to essentially do it. If it underperforms, just eliminate the variables, and essentially this will really help understanding what to do when your video underperforms. Anyway, I hope this video was really helpful, and thank you very much for watching. Alright, so in this video we'll be studying engagement and also be talking about how to improve engagement. So engagement and audience satisfaction, again, usually go hand in hand. And when I'm talking about engagement, I'm also talking about session time on your channel. So it's also an implicit signal that we're going to look at. So the first thing I want to talk about is looking at the comments of a YouTube videos. So let's look at this video, for example. If you look at the comments, you often find what people find important. So for example, you often see that people are like outraged at the government. You can also find people telling their personal stories and like kind of connecting to the people they found within this video or the stories they heard within this video. So one of the things I found really interesting about these comments is, for example, this comment where I can kind of see that people, they want to make sure that they hear the updated stories as well. So I can kind of draw a lot of information from comments like these, where this guy was talking about that he worked in a law firm that was associated with the case in one of the videos, and he essentially was talking about what happened afterwards to that person. And you can kind of see that people were very interested in, like, okay, what happened to the person after the clip, or what happened to them before, what's their backstory and what's their current situation. So stuff like this people found extremely interesting. So what you can, for example, do by studying, okay, they're talking about these certain things in the video, you can kind of start integrating those things within your video as well, and kind of test if that's something that triggers your audience more and more. So as you can see, these are signals you can essentially find from your comments, is that if there's something that pisses your audience off, it's really good. If there's something that your audience is really emotional about, you can find those signals in your comments and you can leverage them in your next video. So that's one way to analyze and improve your engagement, to essentially understand, okay, what causes engagement and how can I improve it. So another signal I also sometimes look at, it's not as important, is the clicks per screen element show. So you can essentially go to your advanced analytics tab in YouTube, you can press the plus button and then press clicks per end screen element shown, and it will give you a percentage of how many times people click through to a next video if they see an end screen on your video. Keep in mind, it's a relative signal, so it's a percentage, so essentially you also have to compare how many clicks there were in total. So for example, if you only look at the percentage, you will see like, oh, this one has 10%, but it only has 4,000 clicks in total. So the next one I want to talk about is essentially end screen element clicks. So what you can do is you can go to your YouTube Advanced Analytics tab and you can press the plus button, and right here you can essentially press these three, and you can kind of analyze how much people have been binge watching your content. So essentially, keep in mind, this percentage is relative to each other. So for example, if you look at this percentage, right, it's 10%, it looks really good, but there's only 40,000 people who have seen those end screen elements. So obviously the percentage is going to be higher because there's less people who've seen that end screen. So the more people who've seen the end screen, the more likely it will be that, again, the percentage will be a little bit lower. But then again, if you, for example, look at numbers that are very similar to each other, like for example, if you look at numbers where they're very close, like this one, like this one has 77,000 and 7.3, and this one has 83,000 and 6.2. Like those you can kind of start comparing with one another. Maybe you can find one that's even closer to each other. Like for example, if you find one that's like both they're 30,000, those are like comparable to each other. You can kind of see if you can adjust different call to actions at the end of the video to increase that click-through rate on your end screens. But yeah, this is again a small signal you can kind of look at to see, okay, how many people are actually like binge watching or watching multiple videos on my channel. Another signal to use to essentially kind of gauge how many people are watching multiple videos on your channel is your average view per viewer. So average view per viewer, you can again find it in your analytics tab, is a way of kind of understanding, okay, how many times do people come back to a video and rewatch it. So as you can see, usually people watch it like 1.2, 1.1 times, and you can essentially kind of gauge how bingeable your content is or how rewatchable your content is by looking at the average views per viewer. Another thing that you can look at to analyze engagement a little bit is looking at your audience tab and looking at the amount of returning and new viewers. The more returning viewers you're garnering over time, the more positive signal you're giving off to YouTube, because essentially if people watch one video and they close out YouTube and they come back later, that's a good way for YouTube to tell, like, okay, they were satisfied with that video last time, so if they come back for another video, that's a really good signal. But keep in mind, the reason why, for example, returning and new viewers are very important is that you have to be able to adjust your strategy based on how many new and how many returning viewers you have. For example, say your returning viewers are getting really, really high, and you're kind of stagnating in growth. You want to make sure you kind of scale up the topics on your channel, or really like scale to a place where you're getting a lot of new viewers, because otherwise you'll be stagnating in your growth. So again, make sure you analyze returning versus new viewers. It will really help you understand, okay, what's the way to go. Like, for example, if you have a lot of returning viewers, maybe try to nurture those returning viewers. Is that not your goal? Maybe, okay, you understand, okay, I have a lot of returning viewers, I might have to scale up towards where essentially I can reach more new viewers. You can also start analyzing, okay, which videos made sure essentially I found new viewers. So like certain viewers will attract, certain videos will attract more new viewers than others. So look at new viewers and returning viewers and draw conclusions from it. So again, you can look at which videos are growing my audience. If you, for example, need to nurture your returning viewers more, like sometimes you will hit the top of your niche, like you literally can't grow anymore, and then you might need to nurture those returning viewers, or you just need to scale to a little bit broader format and essentially reach newer viewers by scaling or making your format a little bit more appealing to a broad audience. So again, returning and new viewers are also a great metric to look at to improve engagement. And yeah, that's basically my favorite few metrics to look at to essentially judge engagement on a channel and then also improve it a little bit. To be honest, by far the best signal is just your comments. If you get great feedback from your viewers, that's really, really good. So comments are by far the best engagement you can get and the best way to judge what your viewers liked and what your viewers didn't. So make sure to really focus on comments. I think it's really understated how important comments can be. So yeah, that's basically all for today's video. I hope it was very valuable, and thank you very much for watching. So the last thing I want you to analyze is the 80-20 rule. The thing that the 80-20 rule essentially displays is that 80% of your results, your views, your revenue, will come from 20% of your videos. So essentially, what the 80-20 analyzation is all about is just looking at, okay, what are those top performing videos? What videos are bringing in the most amount of results or revenue? And then making sure you study those videos and replicate what you did well in those videos. So you really have to look at, okay, what resonated? Why did it do well? And try to replicate it later on. And that's essentially the 80-20 rule. That's all I wanted to talk about. You have to also understand when you're starting YouTube automation, you basically encounter this problem all the time. Like you think like, oh, I'm uploading all these videos and none of them are getting results. it doesn't matter essentially, because if you get one viral, if you get one video that makes you $20,000, you've earned everything back in one go. And that's the 80-20 rule. Essentially, most of your videos will fail and 20% of your videos will be successful, and that will basically get all of your results. So keep that in mind. That's the 80-20 rule. It's important to understand what it is, and it's also important to analyze your channel based on the 80-20 rule. So anyway, I hope you found this video very valuable, and thank you very much for watching. Should you promote your YouTube long form channel using YouTube Shorts or community post? In short, again, my answer would be no. The reason why is that usually what happens is that people create a short form channel, or they create a community post with someone else and they pay them like $500, and they think they're targeting the right audience or sending the right audience to their own YouTube long form videos, but they're actually not. Short form videos and long form videos heavily differ in audiences usually, and you don't notice it on the surface. So think about it. So if you send that wrong audience to your long form channel, and that audience then interacts with your video and doesn't like the video or doesn't give off the right satisfaction signals, YouTube will just kill off that video, because essentially it's thinking like, okay, we're getting this audience from somewhere and they're all not liking this video, so we'll just let the video die. And that's what happens quite a lot of the times when people send in community posts from other channels and their format might slightly differ from theirs. They go to the new channel and they watch the new videos and they again give off the wrong signals. So this is quite a big risk when you're just starting out a channel, and then again it costs time and money to do those promotions. So personally, again, that opportunity cost is not worth it for me. I would just recommend growing that channel naturally and making sure you're just making the best content or best long form content out there, because YouTube's algorithm will pick up if your content is good. It will find the right audience. You just have to give it some time. By sending that community post audience or sending that short form audience, it's possible that you are destroying your chances of going viral, even though you have a really good video. So then again, try to keep it natural. Try and really focus on making quality content and picking the right niches, because that will bring you way farther than, for example, choosing a shortcut by promoting on community posts or using short form to promote your long form content. Anyway, I hope you find value in this video, and thank you very much for watching. So should you be doing YouTube Shorts for a faceless YouTube channel, or if you're doing YouTube automation? In short, my answer would be no. No. So the problem with faceless YouTube channels is that then again, you don't really have that big of a personality behind the channel. And if you wanna create any connection with a short form audience, you need to be able to put a face there and show off your personality, and that's just really difficult when you're running a faceless channel. So generating a short form audience is just way less valuable than if you're a normal YouTube creator. I mean, like, short form content is still great if you're a normal creator and you're just trying to generate an audience to your long form content. But then again, for faceless YouTube channels, I would just recommend focusing on long form. Another thing that's just a big problem with short form content is that it's just not profitable at all. Like, the short form RPMs are going up, that's true, but it's still nothing compared to long form content. So to focus and divert your attention to short form, even though it's just a little bit, it's still a big distraction. Like, the views give you a false sense of confidence when you look at your YouTube dashboard, because short form, you can generate millions and millions of views, but essentially they mean nothing, and they're always just a distraction. They create noise within your YouTube dashboard and within your mind as well. So that opportunity cost is simply just not worth it for me. So then again, think about the opportunity cost when it comes to short form content. It's great for a normal YouTuber, but then again, if you want to be really good at one thing, your focus needs to be there. And I don't recommend focusing on all these little side projects like short form content, because in the end, you have to think about opportunity cost. The next thing I want to talk about is that a short form channel is just not an asset. The problem with shorts is that it, one, doesn't create a good audience, a good connection with an audience as well, because often enough, short form users have shorter attention span than, for example, people who watch long form. Usually they're also younger, so they have less money to spend on products, ads, stuff like this. And usually short form just doesn't transfer over too well to long form videos on faceless YouTube channels. So I personally am not a big fan of using shorts too much. So these are my reasons I'm not a big fan of short form content. Again, you can choose your own way. So if you think short form is worth it, feel free to try it out. But then again, I've not had the greatest experience with short form content, and I do really recommend just focusing on creating the best long form content as you possibly can, instead of distracting yourself and wasting opportunity cost by going into short form content. Anyway, I hope this video was really valuable, and thank you very much for watching. Alright, so in this video, we'll be talking about how to do your administration with your team. I'll keep it very, very basic. You can, of course, make very elaborate automated administration system, but most of you will probably not be using those. So just for this example, I'll show you the most basic administration system you can possibly use for your channels and for YouTube automation, and this essentially will work in any country. You don't have to buy any software. Everything is essentially free for this administration system, so feel free to copy it if you want. It's pretty reliable. You can afterwards, of course, enter it into one of your country's official administration systems. But essentially in this video, I'll be running you through some of the systems and essentially showing you how to do the administration for your teams. And I will also be giving you some templates essentially to make sure your system is organized. First of all, it's very important to note when and how your team will invoice you. So I always tell my team to make sure to always send their invoices before the 1st of every single month. And then I will make sure that I have the payment sent between the 1st and the 7th of each month. This way, by giving yourself a little bit of playroom, it will make sure that everyone is on their right expectations. So say, for example, you're sick on the 2nd of the month, or you're sick on the 1st of the month. You still have time to send that payment without your team constantly complaining. So I really recommend setting yourself some playroom with the dates. If you say like, oh, I'll always pay on the 1st, and you're sick or you have to go out or there's an event you have to go to, you can still move it to another date. So this way your team exactly knows, okay, I'll have the payment before the 7th, but sometimes, of course, it will be on Thursday. And this way you've given yourself some playroom and your team knows exactly what to expect. Now, another thing I often see is that a lot of freelancers, especially out of countries like India, Pakistan, or also the US, if they don't have a personal company, they just ask you to send the payment without sending any invoices on their side. And I really don't recommend doing something like this. Please make sure that every single payment you pay, there needs to be an attached invoice. Especially if you want to scale up later, you have to make sure you have those business expenses booked so you can deduct them from your taxes. So essentially, a lot of the times, my freelancers, they don't even have their own invoices. So I will have to teach them essentially to send me invoices. I usually just tell them to do the following, which is go to a website like invoicegenerator.com. You have a bunch of these types of websites. Essentially, what they have to do is when they invoice me is, of course, enter my invoice information. So my company name, address, full name, stuff like this. And then obviously they have to fill in their own full name, their address as well, if they have one, their company info. So those are really important, because if you don't fill in those, if you don't fill in that information, stuff will go wrong. Essentially, the rest they can kind of fill out how they like. I usually tell them to make sure that essentially every video they make, they list them across every invoice. So essentially, say for example, they make 10 videos. I want them to list each. They just put the title of the videos they did in the invoice itself, and then of course put the quantity and the rate you guys discussed, and then they can essentially just send the invoice to you. So once you received the invoice and they filled everything out, you just want to upload it simply to a Google Drive file where it's like, okay, this is my invoice folder. I would divide it up in months. So you have your invoices. Then you could say something like April, May, June, July, and then put all your invoices in each folder corresponding to the month. So once you've uploaded some of your invoices, I'll just upload one for show. So let's say this one, for example. So once you've uploaded the invoice to the corresponding folder, you essentially want to make sure you log that invoice. So you name the invoice, whatever the full name is of your freelancer. All right, so next you go to your administration template. Essentially, your administration spreadsheet is where you track your cost and your revenue of your channels. I've made a template right here. You can find it somewhere in the course. If you can't find it, feel free to send a message on Discord. But essentially, you can just open up that administration template. And then next, what you do is simply fill out the name of your freelancer, put the amount of dollars on the invoice itself, then put the payment method. So once you've essentially logged the invoice, what I recommend you do is just mark this blue or green or whatever so you know that you've logged that invoice within your own administration Google Drive folder. And then once you've sent the invoice, I would also turn this field blue as well, so you essentially know you've paid that person. And by doing this, you essentially know, okay, how much am I paying my employees, and you also know which payment method you're using. If you're using multiple payment methods, this is a good way to track it. Another thing that's nice to have is this right here. You can essentially just put your channel name and then put the amount of revenue, and then it will automatically calculate how much net revenue you're doing with your channels. So yeah, great spreadsheet. It's very, very simple. It doesn't have to be very complicated. Of course, if you have your own accounting software, feel free to use something like this. But for most individuals and most people, you can use something like you see right here, because essentially it doesn't have to be very complicated unless you start a very big company. So yeah, that's basically it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next. All right, so in this video, I'll be going over how to pay your team members. So essentially, it's important that, of course, you kind of know what payment providers are out there for paying freelancers, and what the pitfalls are with the different types of payment providers. So the favorite one I use for 80% of all my payments, and a lot of freelancers use as well, is Wise or TransferWise. It's a really nice platform. Then again, it does have some issues here and there. Sometimes it does have some bugs within their payment system, and it takes a little bit longer to transfer. But in my experience, it's quite consistent. It's very reliable. The fees are usually pretty low. A lot of freelancers use the payment provider essentially to receive payments. It's also great for just directly sending money to someone's bank account. So again, really, really helpful. And the transfers are pretty fast. But say, for example, you don't like using TransferWise, PayPal should be fine as well, but I would like to warn you that PayPal has a lot of issues. I've had situations before where PayPal will literally look up thousands and thousands of dollars of my money for 180 days. And they just freeze my account without any reasoning and just basically freeze my business. So again, PayPal is way less reliable in my sense. They have huge exchange rates. So when you transfer money from euros to dollars, for example, or the other way around, you have to pay massive amounts for that exchange rate, as well as that sometimes the transfer fees are also really, really huge. The thing I do really like about PayPal is that it has just such a large user base. So it's very easy to transfer the money, as well as that the transfers are basically instant. So when I send a transfer, it immediately goes to their PayPal account and I can see that they've received the money. So that's essentially great. But then again, PayPal does have a lot of issues, like the customer support is usually really bad and stuff like this. So if you can, use Wise. Otherwise, PayPal is fine as well. The last one I want to go over, which I use as well, is Remitly. That's also a possibility. It's kind of the same as Wise, but not as popular, and essentially sometimes it is a little bit slower, and it's mostly used actually to send more personal transfers. So Wise is great for business transfers a lot of the times, but Remitly is more so aimed at like family and friends sending money. So it does have some limited capability as to like business administration and stuff like this. So if you choose between Wise and Remitly, I would still go for Wise. But say, for example, for some reason, Wise is blocked in your freelancer's country, or PayPal can also often be blocked, especially if you have freelancers from Pakistan or India. Usually PayPal is blocked in those countries, and you have to find a different transfer method. So Remitly could be a great substitute for Wise. So again, those are the 3 I would recommend. If you have any other ones, feel free to share them in the community or in the Discord server. And yeah, I hope you found value within this video, and thank you very much for watching. Now, I personally run a lot of copyright-prone YouTube channels. So knowing how to handle a copyright claim is very, very important. So in this video, we'll be going over an example of how I would handle a copyright claim and what to do exactly when it happens. So let's go over to the laptop and I'll show you. So again, we're on the channel Deus. We've not uploaded for a while, but we have a copyright claim on the latest video. This is what I would do. So usually I only do copyright claims or copyright disputes when I'm connected to either an MCN or a lawyer. But in this case, I'm just going to show you. So as you can see right here, we have 2 copyright claims of the tennis clips. There's a few things you could do when you get a copyright claim. So if it's a music, you can either mute or replace the song. This is usually a really bad option because it sounds really weird. Usually when you replace the song, it mutes the rest of the audio as well. So muting or replacing the song usually isn't an option. The best thing you can literally do is just trim out the segment. That will help. But what I also usually do nowadays, and that's because I'm backed up by an MCN and a law firm, is just dispute. Again, be very careful. You can dispute one time. If you dispute one time, you'll be fine. But if your dispute gets rejected and you dispute again, you have to show proof of legal action, which I only recommend doing if you know what you're getting into and if you have a copyright lawyer backing you up. If you don't, do not try to do another legal dispute. So you can just try a dispute as a Hail Mary. So as you can see right there, we'll have a dispute. What happens is you go to this dashboard when you press dispute, and then what you do is you don't press any of these. I would just press my dispute isn't based on any of the reasons above. You would press continue. You would press copyright exception such as fair use. Then you would go over review this, press this check mark. Then we come to the rationale section, which is basically your argument for why it's fair use. Personally, I just use a standard template. I will link this template in the course as well. I don't really recommend using the standard template. Why? Because it's better for you to just formulate a good argument using either ChatGPT or just coming up with your own argument. Because obviously you want to try and include as much details and examples in your videos as you can. But I run so many channels and I get so many copyright claims that I have to do a standard template. Usually they work. It depends on who we're disputing against. If it's someone who often rejects disputes or reviews the disputes, very often you will get rejected. But if it's against a party who doesn't really review their copyright disputes or just leaves it be, then usually you can get away with like a standard template. But it depends. So again, try and write your own if you have the time. If not, you can use the template. So what you would do, again, you would review, okay, what type of video is this? Commentary, I would usually press. Then what you do is you paste in the template, and in the template basically say something like, I assert this use qualifies as fair use under copyright law. The video is educational in nature and my use of copyrighted material is highly transformative. The video consists of commentary on an analysis of the material. I used only as much of the footage as was necessary to effectuate this transformative use. If you're backed by a law firm or a lawyer, you can then also put something like the name of your law firm or your lawyer, and then determine this video is within compliance of fair use statute and is willing to defend this to the fullest extent. So that's another thing you can basically send to them, and that will really help sometimes with them threatening to counter the dispute. So once you've done this, you want to go over to my video doesn't infringe anyone's right. I understand the claimant will be able to review my video and dispute the rationale, and I understand filing fraudulent dispute may result in termination of my YouTube account. Then you have to sign with your name, but then again, only do this, only fill in this fair use forum. I'm not going to do it for this channel if you know you're in your right. So if you know 100% sure the video is fair use and you've let other people look over it and it's fair use content, feel free to dispute. But then again, if you're not in your right and you dispute, you can get in big trouble. So please be very careful when you do dispute a YouTube video, since you don't want to get in trouble for it. But yeah, if you're in your right, you're making fair use content, a documentary, whatever, a dispute could be a very good option. Once you dispute, what will happen is your video will get put in escrow. So that basically escrow is like the YouTube is holding the money, and then once the dispute is settled, YouTube will pay out that money to the basically the winner of that dispute. Usually, once the escrow is over, it will take around 28 days before that money reaches your YouTube account again. So yeah, that's basically how you handle copyright claims. There's not much else you can really do, either remove the video or do a dispute. And yeah, I hope it was very helpful, and thank you very much for watching. Alright, so in this video we'll be discussing how YouTube's copyright and content ID system basically works. So how it works is essentially YouTube has a huge database of songs and copyrighted videos that essentially, when you upload a video to YouTube, they scan your video with an AI and they compare it to this very, very big database. And if YouTube sees that there is a match above a certain percentage, so they assign to each video or clip you're using a certain percentage of likelihood if it's copyrighted content, yes or no. If it's above that certain percentage, you will receive a copyright claim. So once you receive a copyright claim, a few things will happen. Either that video will get demonetized, so the revenue of that video will go to the copyright holder. Another thing that can happen is that you will start sharing the revenue between the copyright holder and yourself. The next option could also be that the video just gets blocked in all the countries, or you could even receive copyright strikes. Now, this is possibly the worst thing that can happen. If you receive 3 copyright strikes in one go, your channel will be deleted. So essentially, this video was just solely for letting you understand, okay, what are the consequences? How does the copyright system basically work? In the next few videos, we'll be going over, okay, how to avoid YouTube copyright detection and stuff like this. But essentially, that's how it works. Another thing that YouTube also does is, if YouTube detects, okay, there's a copyrighted video here, the copyright holder can also request access to the analytics of your video or your channel. So keep that in mind. Those are the consequences. And in the next few videos, we'll be discussing how to avoid copyright and how to avoid limited ads and everything to do with those consequences. So thank you very much for watching. Alright, so in this video, we'll be going over what to do when you get a copyright strike on YouTube. There is basically 3 things that you're going to be able to do. So the first option you would have is submitting a counter notification. So basically, when you submit a counter notification, you have to basically tell the person, okay, why do you think the strike was unjustified? And usually YouTube will be a mediator and essentially look at the situation and decide, okay, who's right here? Like, did you actually have fair use content, or are you actually breaching terms of service, and is the copyright strike deserved? Keep in mind, when you go for this option and you go for the counter notification, you have to know that YouTube usually sides with the person who sent out the strike and not so much the person who does the counter notification. So keep that in mind. Your chances are not very, very big to win if you essentially submit a counter notification, because YouTube usually sides with the person who sent out the copyright strike itself. The second one, which is also really good sometimes, is getting in contact with the person who striked you. Sometimes you can disclose a deal. There's sometimes also a reason why they've sent the strike. So just communicating with them back and forth and being very polite, like, hey, why did you strike me? Is there any way we could resolve this problem? Maybe there's a way where I can pay you some money to essentially get rid of the strike. So keep this in mind. Contacting the striker can essentially be one of the best options you have. Another thing you have to also think about is that if your striker or the person who sent a copyright strike is like a big company, like think about Warner Bros. Or Universal Studios, usually they will not respond to any of your messages. So this will kind of only work if it's like a smaller person or smaller company striking you. That's when they will usually respond. But if it's a big company, they get thousands and thousands of emails about copyright every single day, and the chances that they will respond to your email are very, very slim. So this kind of only works if you checked out the person who striked you and you know it's like a smaller creator or a smaller company. So the third option you would have is simply waiting 90 days for the strike to expire. So this is a very good option if you think like, okay, there's only one video that violated the guidelines. If that's the case, you can just simply wait out those 90 days and the strike will be gone. In the case that there are multiple videos that violate the guidelines, make sure you private them so they cannot also strike those videos and terminate your whole channel. So that's very, very important. Keep that in mind. I hope the video was very valuable and thank you very much for watching. All right, so for the ones who don't know, limited ads or age restrictions are essentially imposed by YouTube when your content violates the YouTube guidelines. So in this video, we'll be talking about how to avoid limited ads and how to deal with them if they happen. So first off, to understand what you have to do with limited ads is you have to understand why do you get limited ads. So basically how the limited ad system works is YouTube essentially looks at your video. So they look at the thumbnail, they look at the title, they look at the whole video as a whole, they look at the captions as well and what happens in the video. And then they rate your video on a certain likeliness to be advertiser friendly or not. So if it goes over a certain threshold or a certain percentage, your video will get limited ads. And if it goes over an even bigger percentage, for example, they also measure how viewers react to your video. They actually will impose an age restriction as well. Like usually limited ads go before age restrictions. So essentially, we're going to be looking at in this video how to avoid limited ads, what to do, and basically how to deal with them. Before we do that, I just kind of want to show you something. Essentially, YouTube or Google released their Google Cloud Vision API, and I think it's a good way to kind of visualize how YouTube looks at your thumbnails and videos as well, because it basically understands by looking at your video and looking at your thumbnail what is going on. I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. Let's switch to my laptop over here. I'm going to show you how YouTube analyzes your YouTube thumbnail for your ad rating. So let's just upload an example thumbnail. So for this thumbnail, I'll just use Mr. Beast's thumbnail. You can essentially upload it to this website, and then what it will do, it will basically analyze the whole image. So as you can see, it analyzes the emotions on the faces. It will also analyze the objects. So you can see it analyzes the person, food, tableware, person, couch, tabletop. It will analyze the whole image and basically tell you what is in there. So it takes even what objects are inside the image into account. Like say, for example, you show a gun in your thumbnail, it will pick that up. So it will know that if you show a gun, it will basically understand it's there, and the chance that you get limited ads will then be bigger. Again, you can see the labels. It labels everything within the video. Then another thing is it will check the colors, and then also you have your safe search rating. So if you look at this safe search rating right here, essentially Mr. Beast's thumbnail is very, very safe for YouTube. So there's nearly no likeliness that there's anything that would trigger limited ads. But if you, for example, upload a new file, which is, for example, a little bit more violent, for example, let's look at this one. So again, it's more difficult for YouTube to analyze this thumbnail, but as you can see right here, it still recognizes a lot of things. Like if you look at the labels, it sees it's a sport uniform, a glove, a muscle, a combat sport. So it immediately recognizes what is going on. It understands the context essentially of the YouTube video itself or the thumbnail itself. So yeah, don't underestimate what they can basically measure. It can even read these really small logos. So it has a lot of context. So as you can see right here, if you look in the safe search, you can see it's triggering the limited ad system. So if this goes over a certain threshold, you will essentially get demonetized. And then again, this is just one image, but take into account that YouTube analyzes your whole video. So yeah, basically if you go over a certain percentage, you will get limited ads, and that's how the system basically functions. So now you understand how it functions. Let's talk about how to basically avoid limited ads from happening. So to avoid limited ads, you first have to understand, all right, where do they come from and what's causing the limited ads? Well, usually limited ads get caused by two different factors. It's either there's too much physical violence within your YouTube videos, or there's too much cursing. Those are the two main factors to getting limited ads. So basically, when it comes to violence within YouTube videos, so think about, for example, people in court fighting, or you could also have car crashes, stuff like this. This is all like graphic content or violence. So essentially, how do you keep these videos from getting demonetized? Well, one of the best things you can do is basically making it educational. If you glorify violence within your YouTube video, that's when you will immediately get limited ads. So what's very, very important is that you make sure, if you have a channel that basically has a lot of graphic images like car crashes, things like street fights, it can only work if you put it in an educational context, because otherwise you will get 100% limited ad. So the only way to be able to integrate graphic footage within your YouTube video is to place it within the right context. So just summing that part up, essentially what you have to do if you want to do stuff with car crashes, street fights, or Karens getting angry and fighting each other, you have to make sure you're able to put it in either a news context, like for example, like a news type YouTube video, an educational type video, or something that has to do with a documentary. So essentially, those are the most important factors. If you glorify it or make like fun of a person in a video, and there's violence, you will get limited ads. So make sure you, if you want to go into a more graphic niche, that you also introduce that educational factor to your videos. So say, for example, you keep getting limited ads, but your videos follow the guidelines. What should you do in that scenario? Well, I've had it with court cases, for example. We were following the guidelines basically, but we were getting limited ads. So how to avoid this? Well, the first thing we tried doing was essentially like making a backlog and then putting the videos up as drafts and then letting them be reviewed for limited ads, and then waiting essentially for them to get reviewed. But what was basically happening is that our whole productivity was getting killed because we were getting so many limited ads that we had to wait 7 days for the video to get reviewed, and then we could upload it. So basically that workflow wasn't working for us, because essentially we had to wait 7 days for each video to get uploaded. So what we did instead is we basically, even if the video got limited ads, we would still publish it. And this is the second thing you can do. You could still publish your YouTube video with limited ads. And if when you do that and you request a review, your video will move up into the review queue. So it will get reviewed way faster. So normally, if you request a review and your video is still in drafts or on private, essentially YouTube will usually take like 7 days. But if your video is getting actually viewed on YouTube and it has limited ads, it will get reviewed way quicker. Like usually within 24 to 48 hours, your video will get reviewed. So if you want to make sure that workflow keeps going very steadily, you can just publish a video with limited ads. And if you know it follows the guidelines, it will get reviewed within 24 to 48 hours. And the video will then basically be released and it can then hit the algorithm. But in short, just make sure you just follow the guidelines. That's one of the only things to basically get rid of limited ads. I would also recommend like checking sometimes with Google Vision AI what's kind of like triggering that safe search. So say, for example, you're showing guns or knives, you shouldn't be doing that, because then again, YouTube picks up on it. Same thing with your title. If you're putting stuff in there that the Vision AI would probably pick up on, that's probably triggering your problem. So that's the kind of way to resolve it. Put it in an educational context. Make sure there's not too much graphic stuff in there. So again, you have to stay under that threshold. You can, of course, put those clips in the video, like car crashes, you can all put them in the video, but you have to make sure it's not only that graphic content, because essentially once you cross that percentage threshold, that's when you will get age restricted or you will get limited ads. So keep that in mind. That's basically how you deal with limited ads on YouTube. And thank you very much for watching. All right. So in this video, we'll be discussing one of the most important pillars when it comes to YouTube automation, which is fair use content. How does the fair use content system work? How can you leverage it? What to watch out for? That's what we'll be covering in this video. I would recommend basically anyone to watch this, unless you're a copyright lawyer, then it's not really necessary. Anyway, when it comes to fair use, there's a few things you need to know. So essentially, fair use is a legal doctrine that essentially applies to copyright law and that allows you to use content from other people under certain circumstances. So there's essentially 4 pillars to fair use. One needs to be very transformative. 2, it also depends on the amount of copyrighted footage used. 3, how does it affect the commercial success of the copyrighted footage you're using? Say, for example, you're giving that copyrighted footage a bad name. You can get a copyright strike for that because essentially you have to put it in a positive light if you're using someone else's work. And 4 would be the nature of the copyrighted work. So anyway, now you know what fair use is and what to look out for. We'll be going over how to integrate it into your own YouTube channel in this video. So we're going over some tips and tricks essentially, and what to look out for. So starting off, I would recommend trying to use as little copyrighted footage as possible. And if you use copyrighted footage, make sure you try to put it either in an educational or commentary context. So that's, for example, why documentary channels don't really get copyright claims or strikes, because essentially all their content is educational and thus it's fair use. But say, for example, you would run a compilation channel, right? So how would you leverage that educational part or commentary part of the fair use doctrine? So what I would suggest, say, for example, you would run a boxing channel, right? What you would do is, instead of giving like funny commentary, like just analyzing what happened or just telling what just happened in the boxing clip, I would suggest you, for example, start educationally analyzing certain parts of the video, like analyzing, okay, how did that punch work, for example. That will really help you avoid getting those copyright claims, especially when you're just starting out a channel and it has not been accepted into the YouTube Partner Program. You have to make sure your videos are really, really fair use. So I would suggest at the start of a channel to especially leverage these types of tactics, like educational type content, to make sure you essentially get allowed to the YouTube Partner Program. You can kind of relax after you've been integrated into the partner program. But before that, I would really heavily rely on making sure your commentary is very fair use, and you make sure you put your compilation channel or your documentary channel in a very educational context. You can also even put it in your description. That sometimes also helps. So another very important thing is the authenticity of your commentary. The problem with a lot of faceless YouTube channels is that their scripts, they usually sound like Wikipedia articles, and they also are very fact-based. So if you want to make sure you comply with fair use doctrine and you don't get copyright claimed as fast, I would really recommend adding your own opinions or commentary to the video. So what I mean by that, you should go up to your scriptwriter and basically tell them, I want you to integrate your opinion into the video as much as possible. Say, for example, you're making a compilation videos about Karens in court, right? What you could say to the scriptwriter is something like, okay, I want you to basically analyze what just happened and then add your own reaction or opinion to it. Because by adding that reaction or opinion to a clip, that essentially makes it fair use immediately. If you don't do that and just break down what happened in the video, it's not fair use. So make sure you add your honest opinion to the YouTube video, or the scriptwriter's honest opinion to the YouTube video. This will really help with fair use, and it's very easy to argue fair use when you say a lot of things like, oh, I think my opinion is, if you add that to the script, that will really help you in the case you get a copyright claim or strike. Next up is, you also have to understand how YouTube determines when to copyright claim a video. And so how does YouTube determine when is a video fair use and when is a video copyrighted material? So essentially, again, what it does, it has a huge database of all these videos. They basically fingerprint the videos, and then once you upload a YouTube video, they will compare your YouTube videos to those fingerprints, and if there's too big of a match, or the likelihood in percentages is too high that it's copyright material, you will get a claim. So essentially, to avoid this, the first part what you have to do is try and use as little copyrighted footage as possible. but also make sure there's interruptions between the copyrighted footage. So you have your copyrighted footage, some of your own footage, copyrighted footage, some of your own footage, right? So it has to go back and forth between the two. This will really help you avoid getting those copyright claims. So my guidelines would be something like this, where you would use 10 seconds of copyrighted footage, and then 15 seconds of your own footage, and then 10 seconds again of your copyrighted footage, and then again 15 seconds of your own footage. So if you kind of alternate back and forth between the two, you should be okay. But once you start going above that 10-15 second mark, that's really when YouTube starts picking up on copyright claims. So make sure you kind of alternate. That really helps. So those interruption in between the copyrighted footage, that really helps you avoid those copyright claims. So another thing that's really important to note is that when you're alternating between those clips, like, okay, 10-second copyrighted footage and 15 seconds your own footage, I really mean that you have to switch to your own footage. If you just continue playing the copyrighted clip in the background while you give commentary over it, that won't work, because YouTube sometimes will still pick up that the video is still playing. So if you, for example, use 10 seconds and then use 15 seconds where the clip is still playing in the background, but your voice is going over it, YouTube will still pick up on it. So you really have to switch to another section of B-roll, or you have to pause the video and just use one still frame, something like this. So make sure you really switch it up when you switch between the clip and the video itself. So use either like a still frame, an animation, other B-roll gameplay could, for example, also be possible. But yeah, that's very, very important when you're doing this strategy. So the next thing that's very important, and this again really, really helps, is making sure you add a ton of edits to the video as well. So make sure you add special effects, make sure you also integrate things like sound effects, memes, those all really, really help. So the more edits you add to the video, or the more transformative you make the video, the less likely it is to get copyright claimed. So then again, try to add as many sound effects, as many of your own humor, other funny clips to the video, like those things really, really help. So try to also innovate a lot in the editing. A good example of that as well would, for example, be slowing down some of the clips of the copyrighted content. So if you slow down the content, it's a bit harder for YouTube to recognize that's a copyrighted clip, because essentially it's a bit different. It's a bit of a mismatch between what's in the database and what you're uploading. So it becomes harder for the algorithm to essentially understand, like, oh, this is copyrighted footage. So keep that in mind. Very useful if you run, for example, like a compilation channel. The next part, which is also very, very important, is that you make sure your clips are from multiple sources. Don't use just one source for your clips. Make sure you try and mix in as many different sources into one video as possible. The more sources you use, the bigger the chance that you will remain monetized and copyright free. So make sure you, for example, if you run a compilation channel or something like a documentary channel, that you don't only use one movie's clips throughout the whole video. You want to make sure you use multiple different movies, multiple different TV shows, maybe other types of B-roll that are not copyrighted. Stuff like this will really help. So again, try to get your footage from as much sources as you possibly can. That really, really helps. Another thing that's really important, say for example, you run a compilation channel, right? And you get your footage from multiple sources, or maybe you get your footage from 3 or 4 different videos. What you want to do is make sure you don't keep those videos in chronological order. What you want to do is you want to take those videos, split them up in separate clips, and then make sure to mix all the clips as much as possible. So all the clips that appeared at the start of the video, you put it to the end of the video, and vice versa. The clips in the middle, you put it to the start of the video. So the more you mix it up, the harder it becomes for the YouTube algorithm to recognize, oh, it's this video that he's referencing. So yeah, again, try to mix up your clips. This really helps, again, also with making sure your videos are more fair use. Another thing that can also help is making sure you sometimes discuss multiple sports or multiple different types of topics. Because say, for example, you only make videos about UFC, MMA, what will happen is that you're only bothering one UFC company and you're not really making your own brand out of it, because you're only like taking footage from one source. And that's when you usually get in trouble. So I would also recommend mixing in, for example, maybe boxing or WWE into your mix. Because what will happen is these companies, they will see it, and they especially get bothered when you're only using their footage and not footage from other places as well. So make sure you really use those multiple sources throughout all your videos. So the following tip would be, make sure that, say, for example, you're in a very copyright prone niche and you have to get to YouTube Partner Program in a legit way, so without a pre-monetized channel, that you essentially sometimes hire a spokesperson for the first minute of your video. Because hiring a face with your video will really increase the chances you will get monetized. So say your channel gets demonetized or you still have to go through the YouTube Partner Program, what really helps is if you hire someone from Upwork or something like that to essentially stand in front of the camera, the chances that you will get demonetized or rejected for reused content will go down quite a lot, because once your face is there, your opinion becomes more real or more valid, because essentially the YouTube reviewers, they will go for the first minute or so of your video. They will usually skip through the video, but of course they will first watch the start of your video. And if there's a face there, the chances that you will get approved will increase significantly. So that's another tip. If you have a hard time getting accepted into the YouTube Partner Program, try to add a face to your YouTube videos. The last thing I want to go over is get creative with the sources where you get your clips from. So essentially, I run a Formula One compilation channel, and what basically happened was that I used Formula One clips, like from the races itself, that were filmed by the Formula One company. But they were copyrighted all the time. Like, these clips were getting copyrighted left and right. So what I did instead, and you can do this as well, is I went to the Instagram of the drivers, because they were posting Instagram stories there. I went to the Instagram of fans or other people who were at the race. And that's where I took my footage or clips from. Because essentially, if you do something like that, usually that user-generated footage from Instagram is usually never copyrighted. So if it's more like authentic footage from fans or the drivers themselves and not from the parent company that usually copyright claims all their footage, that really helps. So get creative with the sources you get your clips from. Anyway, that's the video. I hope this really helped with increasing the fair use on your YouTube videos. And that's it. Thank you very much for watching. What happens when your channel gets demonetized on YouTube, and what should you do when this happens? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in this video. So say your channel gets demonetized. It could happen for a few reasons. So the first reason that is very common is reused content. You're just using too much copyrighted footage and you're not making the content transformative enough. So in the case this happens, you have to make sure you switch back to a mode where you're essentially making very unique content. I would suggest you restructuring your whole videos essentially. So say for example, if you're doing a compilation channel on something like golf, I would recommend then switching over to maybe doing a more news type channel or a more documentary type channel for the time being, getting admission again into the YouTube Partner Program, and then probably switching back to what you were doing before, but then making sure it's a little bit more fair use. Another thing that's a very common reason, of course, is just too much graphic content. I think this one is pretty straightforward. I just recommend making sure you cut it out as much as possible and focus on a bit more light-hearted stuff. Another very big thing that often happens is botted content. So sometimes YouTube essentially demonetizes your channel because it sees the content and it thinks it's so low effort that it thinks it's made by a bot. So in order to fix this, you have to make sure you kind of show YouTube there's actually personality within that channel and that the content is not being botted by some sort of content farm. So what I would recommend doing if your channel gets demonetized for that reason, what you do is you essentially have to make a review video. So this review video will essentially show you show YouTube what your workflow was when producing those videos, and kind of like prove like, hey, I'm not like botting this content. I'm really like producing this myself. So what I recommend doing in that case is essentially make sure you just vlog yourself, like you just start vlogging, and you show them every step of your workflow. So make sure to also show your face within that video, because that really builds a lot of trust if a YouTube reviewer sees your face in that video. And yeah, just show your face, then film your YouTube home screen or your computer home screen, and basically walk them through every step of the process. Like you can show them your Trello with all your topics. You can show them your scripts as well, so you can show them like, okay, this is the script I've been writing. You can also show them the timeline of your video editing, and you kind of have to talk them through the whole workflow. And once you've done that, and maybe make your content a little bit more authentic, like maybe add a spokesperson to the video, or you can add a little bit more voiceover to it, or a little bit more authenticity to the content. Like say, for example, right, you run a quote channel. What you could be doing is giving more context to each quote. So instead of like just reading out every single quote like a robot, you would instead like kind of give a bit of backstory on the person who reads the quotes, or you intertwine the video with a bit of storytelling. So these things could be really nice. So these things could be really helpful when it comes to a channel that got demonetized for botted content. So keep this in mind. That's very, very important. So just to sum those few factors up, again, graphic content, you just have to remove that. That's just not easy to get around. The second one would be reused content. In that case, of course, you have to make your content just way more transformative. So less clips, more voiceover, more edits, stuff like this. We've talked about how to make your content more fair use in a previous video already. So maybe rewatch that if that's the case. Make sure that if you are reapplying for a demonetized channel, that you actually upload some videos before you reapply. So I would recommend like uploading maybe 7 videos to your channel with the new format, because if you just keep your channel the same and like reapply and they watch your channel over again, they're like, he improved nothing. Like, why should we actually give him why should we give them permission to get back into the YouTube Partner Program if they didn't improve anything? They'll probably just continue on what they were doing. So try and introduce that new format, and that will really help getting into the YouTube Partner Program again. So yeah, basically that's it. I hope that encompasses everything you would need to know when it comes to a demonetized YouTube channel. And thank you very much for watching. So you've received 3 strikes on your YouTube channel. What exactly should be your course of action? Well, just to start off, the best way to counter a situation like this is to actually just prevent it from happening. So I would really recommend that you set up those safety parameters before you even get into situations like these. So a good way to kind of hedge against getting copyright striked, of course, just make your content very transformative. But another safety measure you could take is making sure you have the right channel management structures, like the bucket management structures. That's basically where you set up 3 different LLCs, and under each LLC you have a new AdSense account. So when one AdSense account gets taken down, it doesn't affect all the other channels connected to that AdSense account. Another thing you could do is also apply to an MCN. Some of the MCNs make sure you don't get all your channels terminated when something like this happens. But then again, some people just don't want to join an MCN, so that's why the bucket management structure could also be a good option as well. Anyway, say you don't have these safety parameters in place and you got 3 strikes. What should you be doing? Well, the first thing you can obviously do, and we've talked about this before, is essentially just sending a counter notification. So again, you would dispute all the strikes, tell YouTube, okay, this is why the situation is not justified, and this is why I'm arguing for fair use. So you have to make a very comprehensive essay on exactly why you're in the right. So I would really spend your time trying to come up with the best argument you can possibly think of for why your content is essentially fair use. But if that doesn't work, another thing you could be doing is, again, like contacting the person who sent you the strikes and paying them essentially to get those strikes removed. Like, for example, what I would do, I'd rather pay him like $30,000. If my channel is doing $30,000 a month, I'd say to the person who strike me, like, okay, I'll pay you 30 grand. You just leave my channel alone. You'll retract all the strikes. I won't do something like that again. At least like remove the strikes, and I'll send you I'll send the money over, right? So yeah, that's one thing you can do. Make sure you keep in mind that if you do this, you're prone to getting scammed. So you have to understand that when you do it, you have to first ask him, okay, can you remove like one of the strikes so my channel's safe for now, and then basically you will send the first half of the payment, and then when he removes all the rest of the strikes, you pay him the second half. So that's another thing you can basically do. The last thing I wanted to go over for when your channels are about to get terminated, say for example you only have 2 strikes and you see the strikes basically coming in real time, that sometimes when you're lucky enough you will catch the strikes coming in onto your channel, you will get the notifications. If you're quick enough, you can delete all the other videos that contain copyrighted content and that they could possibly strike. This way, they cannot submit the 3rd strike, and you can maybe still save your channel. So when you see the strikes coming in and it's like one after another, make sure to private all your videos, because this could save your channel if you're quick enough. So yeah, that's basically it when it comes to striked or deleted YouTube channels. There's not too much you can do. The best thing to do when it comes to this situation is essentially making sure you're prepared. So making sure you have the right management structure, making sure your videos are actually fair use would be the best way, of course, to go about something like this. So I hope this video was a little bit helpful. I know it was a little bit short and straight to the point, but anyway, thank you very much for watching. Alright, this is going to be a short video. In this video, I'm going to be going over how to get permission to join the YouTube Partner Program. It's a very simple video, very straightforward. So if you're a more experienced person on YouTube, you can skip over this video. But if you don't know how to get admission to the YouTube Partner Program, this would be a good watch for you. So what I would suggest is that most of the channels, of course, they will get automatically added to the YouTube Partner Programs. But in some cases, like for example, when you run a compilation channel or you run a channel that's more copyright heavy, then this video will be very valuable for you. So essentially, what you should do to get automatic admission to your YouTube Partner Program is make sure your channel, first of all, just looks very high quality. Make sure you have solid branding, make sure you have a solid logo, and make sure that your thumbnails look very clean. You basically have to understand that essentially, until you get monetized, you have to be on your best behavior. Because sometimes what I would recommend doing is, say for example, right, you find an example channel you want to kind of copy, but you notice that chances are very big that you won't get permission to the YouTube Partner Program because it's kind of a risky format. What I would suggest doing is first going with an ad format or a video format that essentially makes sure you're 100% going to be allowed to join the YouTube Partner Program. So say it's a very copyright heavy niche, maybe you can do something where you add more voiceover or you add more transformative content. So I would really recommend being I would really recommend being on very good behavior when you start your first channel, or you still have to get admission to your YouTube Partner Program. And then once you've been allowed into the YouTube Partner Program, that's when you can kind of become more relaxed with your content. You can add more copyrighted content to your videos. But again, that would be the biggest tip. Just make sure you're on your best behavior when you first start your channel, because it would be a shame if your channel takes off and you are just constantly spamming copyrighted clips or copyrighted content within your documentaries, within your compilations, and that you will basically get denied for YouTube Partner Program because of that reason. So again, play it safe at the start as much as possible. Even maybe hiring a spokesperson for some niches could be interesting. Like for example, when you're in a niche like the motivational niche or the quote niche, try to kind of differentiate yourself. Like for example, in the quote niche, what you could be doing is hiring a spokesperson to basically read up the quotes and give some extra background context. Even though these videos will not do as well in the YouTube algorithm, it's better to play it that way, because chances are just bigger that you will get permission to join the YouTube Partner Program. And yeah, something is better than nothing. So you can better first play it safe, just grow a little bit slower and 100% sure you're going to get at it, than just playing it really risky and then your channel blows up and you can't monetize your videos. So I would go for slow and steady instead of fast and risky. So summing it up, in order to get added to the YouTube Partner Program, you essentially need to make sure you're on your best behavior before you get added. So make sure, again, your branding looks good, your videos are as much copyright clean as possible, there's no limited ads, no swearing, anything like that. Try to kind of like twist your format in a way where it's as much fair use as possible. And once you've been released or you've been granted permission to join the YouTube Partner Program, you can become a bit more relaxed and you can go to the format where you originally discovered a huge amount of demand. So keep that in mind. That was the whole video about getting admission to the YouTube Partner Program, and thank you very much for watching. Alright, so in this video, I just want to quickly go over what Teach Yourself is. So my philosophy when it comes to this platform and its course is to give you the best possible chance to become successful at YouTube. So essentially with Teach Yourself, I aim to basically give you not only my expertise with the course and whatever you see from me on Twitter or the Discord community, but also give you a way to find very valuable resources and experts in other areas of YouTube. Like for example, I'm not an expert on storytelling. I'm also not an expert on making thumbnails. Like there's people way better at me in those areas. So what I would suggest is that after you finish the course and you've read through everything on Twitter and Discord, you can also keep studying by essentially looking at the Notion sheet called Teach Yourself. It will have basically 7 years of me saving the most valuable lessons I've learned from other experts within the YouTube industry. And I think this is a very valuable sheet if you want to keep studying and keep improving at YouTube. I think learning from experts who've dedicated their whole lives or whole careers to becoming good at one certain aspect of YouTube or video editing or storytelling is way more valuable than me trying to mimic that. So essentially that's what Teach Yourself is all about. It's learning from industry experts all over the place. So the Notion sheet is probably linked under this video or it's placed in a link section of this course. I hope this will be very, very valuable to you, and thank you very much for watching.